Stratford and Dutchess County.
Welcome to the Durham Town Council meeting of Monday, August 12th, 2024. We're in the Durham Town Hall at 7 o'clock. I call this meeting to order. I'd like to do a roll call of members. We are missing one counselor this evening. Counselor Registers won't be with us, but the rest of us here. So can we start here?
Heather Grant.
James Bubar.
M. Friedrichs, and I use the pronoun Zer.
I'm Todd Selig, the administrator.
Sally Needell.
Joe Friedman.
Wayne Burton.
Eric Lund.
Darrell Ford.
All right, so the next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Anyone want to make any changes? Yes, Councilor Friedman.
Yes, on number 11, which is the veterans tax credits,
11B and 11C.
11B and 11C.
Okay.
On the agenda, they're called out separately, and yet in the packet, it just came out as 11B, with both of them combined into 11B. And I would like to have them separated and vote separately on the disabled credit versus the all veterans credit. So that would adjust the agenda, or at least line up what the original agenda was.
We do have separate motions, but we have the public hearings are combined. Would you like to keep the public hearings separate, like the public hearing comments for the first one?
Yes.
11B first.
Yes.
And then
They're related, but they're two different
do them
issues.
entirely separately.
Yes.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we do that with agenda items 11B and 11C.
I'll second that.
Okay. So I guess we can vote on that and then vote on the approval of the agenda. Or can we reword that so you approve the agenda
I would like
with the
to
exception?
move that we've approved the agenda as amended, the suggestion for amendment by Councillor Friedman.
Okay, that works. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Councillor Lund. All right, now we're ready to vote. We can do just an aye, nay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, raising hands. All right. Any opposed? No. All right, so unanimous.
Thank you.
Yep, very good. All right, special announcements. Just a quick one first. Our next meeting is September 9th because the first Monday will be Labor Day. And we'll have meetings 2 weeks in a row. So the 9th and the 16th will be the next town council meeting. Lots of great introductions tonight. And the first of those is introduction of our new UNH president, Elizabeth Chilton, and UNH assistant vice president of public affairs and interim chief of staff, Thomas Cronin. So please, we'd love to. Yes, whichever, you may sit or you stand, whichever you're more comfortable. Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, thank you for the invitation and this opportunity to meet members of the community. As Sally just mentioned, my name is Elizabeth Chilton. I am completed 5 weeks as the president of the University of New Hampshire. Very proud to be a Durham resident now. Get to walk into town. I could have walked today, although I just left a little bit, not enough time after dinner. But I've had the opportunity to meet with Todd Selig, talk with him on the phone as well as meet in person, and really try to get to understand how the university can partner with the town of Durham and the surrounding region to work together on making our community stronger as we move forward. And I did want to, many of you know Tom Cronin, not Todd Selig, but Tom Cronin. And Tom has come on as my interim chief of staff, hopefully permanent chief of staff, if I don't steer him away too badly. But in Tom's role, it's really a newly framed role of chief of staff where, I want to make sure that both of us are accessible, that if there are things that people hear in the community that they're not sure that's really true what the university is doing, that people reach out to us and that we make sure we have strong communications back and forth. And that we work together and really see this as a true partnership. I had the opportunity, I most recently served as the Chancellor of Washington State University in Pullman at the flagship campus. Happy to have moved from being a cougar to a wildcat, thank you very much. Especially a woman of my age, that's very important to be a wildcat. My relationship with the city of Pullman was really important. They have a mayor, governor, government, and the mayor and I were constantly texting each other, hey, I heard the town was going to do this. No, that's not really, and back and forth. So I hope that I have that relationship through Todd, but through all of you as well. A couple of things, and I do want Tom to be able to introduce himself, and there are going to be opportunities where I cannot be somewhere. Tom really speaks for me and confer daily multiple times during the day, and so that's another way for me to make sure that I'm staying informed. So a couple of things. In the 5 weeks that I've been serving in this job, I've met not only people from our community, but also really made my way around campus, spoke to faculty senate, faculty union groups, graduate student senate, the undergraduate student government, groups of concerned faculty about some of the events that took place this spring. I've been meeting with our deans, with our vice presidents, and today I had a full tour of the facilities, all around the facilities units. Got to see how we produce energy and steam for the campus and for the community and for the state. And so it's really been a deep dive to get to understand. I'm from the Northeast. I was born in New York State and spent more than half my life in Massachusetts before spending just 4 years out in Washington. So for me, I feel like this is a real homecoming back to New England. My sister raised her 4 boys in Pelham, New Hampshire, and I came up here a lot. My nephew graduated from UNH, so it really feels like this is a long-term investment for me. I am going to retire in this job, and I hope that's in at least 10 years. Unless somebody kicks me out, I am not going anywhere, and I really want to partner with the community. Just one thing I want to mention, I know that you have a resolution that you'll be considering later today, and I had the opportunity to review it. And I do want to say that, my very first meeting with Todd Selig was about partnering between the university and the town to ensure that we're supporting freedom of speech, that we're keeping our community safe and open, and that we make sure that we emphasize de-escalation in all encounters. Those are the values that we are committed to. So in principle, the language of the resolution, while I may not agree with every single whereas, the principle that's behind this, I applaud it and support it, and I know that my colleagues at the university do as well. So Tom, I wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Perfect. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thank you all for having us for a couple minutes tonight. As Elizabeth said, my name is Tom Cronin. I've actually been with the university for just over 10 years, actually, this summer. Started about a decade ago working on our state government relations. Got to know Councilor Burton a bit from his time in state government. And most recently, my role involved state and federal government relations, as well as our public relations and external engagement work. As Elizabeth said, she asked me to come over to help out in this new role a few weeks ago, essentially. I just learned tonight, apparently I have 10 more years to go. But it has been a great experience getting to know her, and I think the vision she has for the university and where we're hopefully going to go during her tenure. And it's really exciting that it includes continuing to strengthen the relationship with this body and the town. I know from my relationship with Todd that we do have many touch points across the university with great things going on in collaboration. Looking forward to better understanding those and working with you all to strengthen them however we can. So I'll stop there, and I'm not sure if there's a Q&A period or not,
Yeah.
but otherwise we'll let you have your meeting back.
Well, welcome to Durham.
Thank you so much.
Glad that you could come this evening. I think we're going to save our questions for another time, and I believe that we may be having Karen Edwards, administrative assistant, contact counselors to see what questions they may have, so we can, as a council, decide what are council questions as opposed to individual counselor questions. So we'll try to prepare that before too long.
Wonderful.
Great. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
Good
thank
luck.
you. Nice meeting you, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Bon chance.
All right. Well, we have another introduction tonight. This is our Oyster River Cooperative School District Superintendent, Dr. Robert Schaps. to be with us?
Yes, good evening. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you for this opportunity to introduce myself to all of you. As I begin my remarks as well, I just wanted to certainly graciously thank Todd. You have been incredibly welcoming, and that goes way back to your participation in the superintendent search process, but also from that point forward, just having the opportunity to meet with you and talk, and your support has been certainly appreciative. So thank you. I'm excited to come back to New Hampshire. So I, just to kind of go full circle, I lived for quite some time in Mount Vernon, New Hampshire. We had a small farm as I was an educator in Londonderry before I continued on my journey to Massachusetts and to New York, where I was a superintendent in Westchester County for the last 18 years. And so it was nice to come back. With the plan to come back to New Hampshire, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be considered for the Oyster River superintendent position. In many ways, it kind of mirrored my past experience in working in the Mamaroneck Public School that was really comprised of 3 municipalities. So there seems to be synergy with this idea of, and what was critically important was the strong partnership and relationship, as Dr. Chilton mentioned, between the community, between municipal government and the school system. That really was a critical factor in our success in New York. And I would say that looking and studying Oyster River and the long-standing partnership with certainly the town of Durham, Lee, and Madbury, that really has been what I would say impressive. And I'm looking to continue to, in some ways, support that long history, but also find new ways and new opportunities to work together. So I appreciate that. I also, what really interested me in the Oyster River School District is the fact that you had the jewel of a university in the community as well. And so the creativity and the innovation around partnering with higher education as well was a wonderful opportunity that to me is certainly magic. That is to think about the continuum between public school and higher education all in one place, all in one community. So it's exciting. And I too I'm relatively, as you know, new in my seat. It's been about 5 weeks. I had the opportunity, really, I retired last October in New York and kind of took a break for a few months and been able to kind of slowly enter into this position. And since July 1st, really have spent a lot of time focusing on my entry plan, which really is built on evenings like tonight, where I have the opportunity to introduce myself and build an opportunity to have two-way conversations about stakeholders' involvement in the school system. So I look forward to future opportunities to have more in-depth conversations and certainly get to know all of you individually and collectively. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm going to put in a little plug, given your history as a farmer, that Durham is having its 11th annual Farm Day, Saturday, August 17th.
This Saturday.
So this Saturday, right, and there's online, you can find the list of all the different farms that are participating, but
right there.
Thank you.
a number of them are from UNH, so it's a great teaching experience that goes back to UNH's agriculture roots, and a lot of the farms are also in Lee, so it involves the neighboring towns.
Thank you. Well, as a longstanding participant in the Sheep and Wolf Festival in New Boston, I look forward to the opportunity.
Great, great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And we have one more introduction. We have Jane Murphy, who is our new minutes taker, and she's joined us this evening. She's going to try her best to recognize our voices and learn about who we are. So.
Right. I'll be listening intently and watching intently in the future. I've lived in town for like 21, 22 years down on Cedar Point Road, and I've spent most of my career at our local community newspapers, Foster's and the Portsmouth Herald. Since I've left that full-time about a year ago, I've just been doing freelance writing and editing for PR or for the newspapers. And I look forward to using those skills for the town of Durham now, too. So I appreciate the opportunity.
That's great.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
I
Thanks.
also appreciate any feedback you could give me as you read the minutes, which I'm sure you do, but I would like to hear it, too, because I'm learning.
Great. Thank you, Jane.
We could use a press person around here every now and then.
All right. So next we have public comments. So please be sure to give us your name and address and You have 5 minutes to speak with us. Thank you.
William Hall, Durham. Well, I learned some things from Rich last week that I want to share with you. Did you notice where he said that we have to pay UNH for alternate water sources in case for backup resiliency and that sort of thing? No, we don't have to. We have more money invested in their water sources than they have. For instance, at Spruce Hole, we paid half of the $2.5 million. That's paired with the water line for a mile and a half down Mill Road to their plant, which that wouldn't make any use having Spruce Hole without that water line, so just go into the Oyster River. That was $1.5 million. We paid $900,000 out of the $1.5 million. So out of those $4 million, we've paid over $2 million. The university's paid under $2 million. We aren't asking them for that money, but wouldn't be paying them anything for access to our own water sources. He said that we share on water, we're talking about the water now, not the sewer, 1 to 2, or 1/3, 2/3. That's not the case. In the sewer, that's exactly what we do. As I just got through saying that the projects have all been lopsided, Durham has paid more than the university has, and of course the one that Mill Road was before Todd got here, but Spruce Hole wasn't. The one thing where we did pay 1/3, 2/3 is the Foss Farm tank. It's on university property. We bonded it. The university made 65% of the payments. And it went that way for nearly 50 years until Todd Selleck got his hands on the project. So it got overhauled for $800,000. Now this has happened before, and we split it the same way we split the sewer, because it's the water meters that drive the sewer bills, or the split for the sewer, and it's the same way for water infrastructure, which is that water tank. All of a sudden, it got overhauled for $800,000, and we paid all of it, according to Todd, Gale, and Carden Welch. We have no business paying all of that. That's crazy stuff. Then I learned that our per unit cost for water went up. That's the thing you figured out, went up. And the answer from Rich Raines was, yeah, it went up because the university's production went up. Since when does their production go up and our per unit cost go up, being driven by that? Once again, that's crazy stuff. And Eric, that's not like anything to do with how close the connections are. We have been subjected to a terrible relationship with the university. Their master meter wasn't running proper, was over-registering by as much as 50%. And over a period of time, we got billed for about $1 million that they never pumped and we never used for a number of reasons. It was a mess. It was a simple mathematical equation, but there wasn't anybody on the council that could understand it. Now, I can understand why your staff, the university staff and engineers and the council couldn't figure it out, but once I tell them what it is, if they can't figure it out, then they need to get a new job. Now, as far as the projects go that he says we pay 1/3, 2/3, we recently did a water line on Park Court. Our staff hired somebody that could not deal with ledge. They were gone within a couple of days. So we had to hire someone else. I figured that about doubled the cost of the project because they were already booked, and it took them all summer to put in 600 feet of pipe, which should have taken 10 days. So, because they were on the job and off the job. We just did a project from the Circle on the other side of UNH to their $27 million athletic building. Went to the hydrant by the athletic building. I'd like Todd to tell us how much of that UNH paid for. We did another job on the end of Stratford Avenue. Now, take the New England Center. They're on Stratford Avenue. but we've got connections on both sides of them. So we maintain the pipe right past the New England Center.
Thank you, Bill.
Want me to quit?
Yes.
Oh, of
please.
course you do.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
See if you can get up the,
You're there.
there we go. All right. Joshua Meyerowitz, 7 Chesley Drive. I support the free speech resolution before you in the hope that we never see again what I witnessed on May 1st at UNH and I described to you last time. And since I spoke to you, a number of the arrestees have sort of let UNH off the hook without even seeing the charges against them because they worried about their study abroad and other opportunities. But I think we still need to confront what really happened at UNH and have the truths come out, including some violent assaults against people who were not guilty of what they were arrested for, as indicated in this update from WNYR.
12 people were arrested at the May 1st pro-Palestinian protest at UNH. Students had set up an encampment in front of Thompson Hall. Police had warned the students arrests would be made if the students didn't take the tents down and clear the property. UNH's police chief Paul Dean told us then that setting up an encampment was in violation of the permit granted to organizers. After 3 warnings over an intercom, police arrived in riot gear, and a dozen people left in handcuffs. All were charged with disorderly conduct and criminal trespassing, 2 charged with resisting arrest, and 2, Aiden Turner and Sebastian Rowan, are facing simple assault charges for allegedly grabbing the UNH police chief. But now, 8 of their charges dropped entirely. 3, including Turner, opting to go to trial with dates already set for September and October, and Rowan's case was moved to Stratford Superior Court. It's unclear when he'll be back in front of a judge. In Dover, Kelly O'Brien, WMUR, News 9.
So now we know that things started hours before in a very bad way, and that the governor behind the scenes called the protesters anti-Semites and ordered riot troops to the area to combat pure hate, which was crazy considering all of the Jews involved in the anti-war movement. And I think the governor's intrusion sort of led hearings, including the very highly regarded Chief Dean, who ran into the protesters, as I described in more detail last time, out of uniform to wrestle fabric, and then created all these fabrications about tents and other things that had not yet been set up, and the linked armed circle he had to fight through, and no such thing happened, and then he had 2 people arrested who never touched him. Aiden did encourage the people to lock arms after the chief left, but the chief slipped away. Sebastian Rowan and Aiden never touched him, yet they were arrested later for violently assaulting him. Here's the chief slipping back with his fabric behind the linked armed protesters to T Hall. He returns, and he's next to 3 witnesses, one of them who's introduced himself to you today. And unfortunately, these people have yet to correct the public information that's been sent out. I was also a witness. Here I am in that back of that same video. From my video, you can see here Sebastian Rowan as he and others are attacked before they committed any violation of the overnight camping, and some of them had nothing to even do with setting up tents. I witnessed as the chief of police pointed, summoned, and directed 2 officers to violently take down Sebastian Rowan. You can see that here, and they do. And then he's arrested and carted away. Since there was no evidence of him attacking the chief, they now said they arrested him for more serious crime of attacking 2 uniformed officers who assaulted him at the direction of the chief. Aiden, as you saw last time, was also falsely targeted and taken down. I won't re-show you that video that made some of you jolt. The Concord Monitor then followed up with reinforcement of what I said. Aiden was near but not touching the chief. The probable cause affidavit was falsified. Dean refused to comment. Since then, been a lot of updates, faculty senate motion, a forceful faculty that I handed out to you, saying that charges should be dropped, but UNA's violated all of its values. The ACLU has submitted a 7-page letter, very heavy, about heavy-handed and excessive police response to peaceful protesters, unconstitutional viewpoint discrimination. Ironically, since then, the viewpoint protesters were chanting as they were attacked were echoed by the highest court in the world. Free, free Palestine, basically, they said. Divest, divest. All country states have to do that. It's time, therefore, for the truth to be told and announced and correct the enduring news media record that you just saw. And if we don't want this to happen again at UNH, these types of things, it's not too late for some of the officials here to correct the record, and I encourage you to support this resolution. Anyone who wants to see my prior presentation, search on my name, UNH, you'll find it, or search on this title here. Thank you. Did it. Whoa. One thing right, at least. Thank you. Not too late.
Is anyone else who would like to make a public comment? Yes.
Thank you so much. Sorry I was late. I was coming from another event. My name is Lauren Selig, and I just want to remind everybody in Durham and anyone else who might be listening further afield that we do have primaries September 10th for all state representatives, for our gubernatorial candidates, for our sheriff's department, among others. But the office that I really hope people pay attention to is executive council. A few years ago, our districts were redrawn, and for people who are unsure of our current district, it goes from Durham to the Canadian border and then includes Coos County. It covers literally 50% of the geography of the state while still just being 20% of the population. And if you don't know what the Executive Council is, it's a 5-member board that makes decisions about all state contracts over $10,000. They also approve all of our judges and all of our commissioners. And so they have a tremendous amount of power. We're actually the only state in the nation that has an active executive council. The only other state that has one at all is Massachusetts, and theirs is purely advisory. And so I really hope people will do a deep dive into researching their candidates for all offices, but I hope people will make sure that they vote this time for the executive council seat, because last time we had a lot of empty ballots, and I want to make sure we don't have that again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I have a hand up on Zoom.
Okay. We don't have a signal on the screens that we're looking at.
Here,
There we go.
here we go.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just like to echo Professor Meyrowitz's comments in support of
Could you just do a quick introduce yourself, give us your address, name and address. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. My name is Sebastian Rowan. I'm a grad student at UNH. I live in Manchester, but I was mentioned in Professor Meyrowitz's presentation. I was one of the students who was arrested on May 1st at UNH, and I support the proposed resolution supporting free speech in the town of Durham and on the UNH campus. Honestly, I wish it was, at least from the draft that I had seen previously, I wish it was a little more forceful, and perhaps even was an ordinance which specifically outlined rules for when state police could be ordered onto the college campus and to the town of Durham with what we've heard is without any prior knowledge from any of the officials who you would expect to have some sort of knowledge about that sort of thing. Because the way that event transpired and led to the arrest of me and many of my friends, honestly has had a chilling effect on at least our perceived ability to exercise our freedom of speech. So I would really hope that everybody would support this resolution. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Anyone else on Zoom?
Not that I can tell. Oh.
Okay. Do you want to speak, Peter? Okay.
So good evening, councilors. For the record, my name is Peter Schmidt. I'm a state representative from Dover. I've come over tonight for the opportunity to meet President Chilton, but also to hear the presentation that we've heard from Professor Meyerowitz. I'd like to say that I heartily approve of this early introduction of by Professor and Dr. and President Chilton to the town council and vice versa, because I think that with a university as relatively small as UNH is, and a town that's also as relatively small, not the kind of thing you could have with New York or San Francisco or any of the big cities, also with massive universities, entities as relatively small as these two should be on a first-name basis without getting too close and meddling in each other's business. You should be telephone and speak with one another in a way that advantages both parties, and especially the citizens of Durham, citizens of New Hampshire, and the citizens who are attenders at the university. So I think this is a wonderful start. I congratulate both President Chilton and all of you for arranging this. I'm glad to see that Tom Cronin is here, whom I also know, and I think this is the beginning of a better relationship than I've known it to be back in the day when I was a faculty member in the 90s, the 1990s, just in case anybody. I frequently get told I'm getting old in the years, but I'm still pretty functional, I think. But this is an opportunity to build on something, especially at a time such as this, where the May 1st events were not only unfortunate, but they were badly handled by a number of people involved on both sides of the state and the university. And I think that some suggestion that has been made that perhaps a closer involvement of your own police force, which has a lot of experience at dealing with students in large numbers, but also potentially a little bit out of control, such as Super Bowl or NCAA championships and so forth and so on. When alcohol is involved, that was not the case on May 1st. But I think we're very, very lucky since the state police brought some ARs on the campus with them. I don't fault the governor for sending detachments to station in Newmarket and Lee so that they could be quickly here if something got out of hand. But this was a very different kind of situation. The protesters were peaceful. They were seeking a ceasefire, an end to the awful slaughter that's going on in Gaza right at the moment, and to be arrested and potentially charged, that's a matter for another evening. But so I also want to speak on behalf of the hard work and applaud you for the hard work that your Human Rights Commission has done on this resolution. And from what I've seen of it, I think it's a step in the right direction, which needs to be done. So a number of you are people I've known in some cases for many years. Some of you I don't know yet, but I don't want to make this a regular appearance here at the town council, but this is an opportunity to encourage you to keep doing the right thing and look into things that were not so right. So I also fully endorse the call on the part of over 150 former and present faculty members for a thorough investigation of what went wrong, because it's not just the potential seeming apparent heavy-handedness of the law enforcement authorities regarding the students, but also the potential for violence and so forth on the part of things that could have easily have been much, much worse. So this is something that I hope you will continue to look into as well. So thank you for the opportunity to address you, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom or?
Sebastian has his hand up again. I'm not sure if that's...
He...
Do we
does he have time left within the 5 minutes that we could allow the remainder of the 5 minutes?
He did have some time left. I don't remember exactly how much. Maybe, he was pretty succinct, maybe 2.5 minutes. I'm not sure.
Could we allow
We
a
can give
shorter?
him his,
I have 5 minutes if he needs it.
No.
we'll,
I don't think it would be fair to give him
No more
7.5
time,
minutes when
right.
everybody else gets 5.
Sebastian, I'm sorry that you felt you needed to come back on. We'll give you 2 minutes. We want to be fair to the other people making public comments tonight.
Yeah, of course. I don't think I'll even need 1 minute. I just wanted to say I was a few minutes late to getting into the Zoom call, so I wasn't able to see President Chilton's presentation, but I just wanted to add that I'm hoping, since the topic of freedom of speech is on the agenda today and in Durham in general tonight, that hopefully encourage that the university would be more willing to engage in dialogue with student organizations who have an interest in the free speech on campuses.
And just as, for your knowledge and the public as well, all of the meetings are recorded and usually available the day after. So you can find the link for that on our town website. If anyone missed anything, they can always go back and watch it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I think that's everyone. All right. Next on the agenda is report from the UNH Student Senate, but I suspect that they're still on vacation, so I don't know that there's anyone here to speak or on Zoom. So let's move on. No unanimous consent agenda, no committee appointments. So we have a presentation next. It's a presentation by Executive Director Jen Kennedy of the Blue Ocean Society on what they've collected on the shores of Durham. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Kept the choice, I was supposed to put it back up.
I have hopefully a few slides that'll come up. My computer's warming up. But I want to thank you for inviting me to come here tonight. I know you received our beach cleanup handout that we've sent out to all the towns where we've done cleanups in the last year. Here we go. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come here and answer any questions you have, and also add some, do a little bit deeper dive into our Durham data and add a little bit of context. So I'm Jen Kennedy, Executive Director of Blue Ocean Society for Marine Conservation, co-founder as well. We've been around since 2001, and our mission is to protect marine life in the Gulf of Maine through research, education, and inspiring action. So we actually got our start doing whale research off the coast focusing on Jeffrey's Ledge, which is about 20 miles offshore. And soon we really wanted to get the community involved in protecting the whales that we studied. So we started working with local state agencies and doing beach cleanups with their permission and support. And the program, so those started in 2001, and the program has expanded kind of beyond our wildest dreams. So on the one hand, it's great that we have more volunteer interest every year in doing beach cleanups and keeping our shorelines clean, and interested in the problems of plastic pollution and human interactions with the ocean and how people can help. On the other hand, we can still, after over 20 years, go out to any beach in the area and find litter, unfortunately. So we have a number of marine debris programs. Our goals ultimately, since we're a conservation organization, are to protect marine life. But also while we're out there, every single time we do a beach cleanup, we collect data so we can learn about the types of litter that we're finding out there to drive solutions, hopefully. And then also out there, inspire action and behavior change. So I don't know if any of you have been on a beach cleanup. Every cleanup I've ever done, at least one person says, oh, this beach looks pretty clean, this shouldn't take that long. And then they're really surprised when they end up picking up sometimes hundreds of pieces of trash, or sometimes 20 or 30 or even 200 pounds of litter. So hopefully that will inspire them to go home and think about things like how they use plastic and if they're recycling as much as they could and things like that. So we've been doing beach cleanups for a while. Our Adopt a Beach program, which involves groups in cleaning beaches once a month. We actually have a woman who recently and her family adopted Adams Point for monthly cleanup. So hopefully I'm going to show you some data from Adams Point, which is a little bit sparse over the last few years, but hopefully that will increase this year. So we're really excited about that. We also have public cleanups. We do a number of other cleanups. We work on whale watch boats and collect data while we're out watch that we see, so we can see, for example, how many balloons are ending up out on the ocean and plastic bags that get out there and things like that. We've been working with UNH for quite a while, actually about 10 years, in studying microplastics on our beaches, so those tiny trash, and involving volunteers in sampling efforts. And then trying to put into action whatever we can to prevent pollution. So one thing we've been working on is putting up fishing line recycling bins at marinas along the coast. I think we have 18 now, and they go from Kittery down to Massachusetts. I think there's one at Great Bay Marine now. And as I mentioned, we collect data at all of our cleanups. On my right, you can see the data card that we use, which has about, I think, 47 items that we keep track of that we have decided that are of interest to us and other organizations around that do research and policy making. Also on that data, there's a big section for other, so people can put in, if they can't find a place to put it, they stick it in there. So I'll show you some data and fact sheet. There's a lot of others on there, which is great. It's telling us we're getting a good count of the number of items that we can't distinguish every single thing we pick up. We'd be out there forever. We also use an app called Marine Debris Tracker, which is free. It was developed several years ago by a former UNH professor, and so you can go out to any beach or any location and download this app and record data and use our data card to record what you find. And then the little data card at the bottom just shows you that what we record when we're out whale watching as far as litter. So altogether last year, this is basically from Portland to Boston. We did over 300 beach cleanups, and this is thanks to, actually over 4,000 volunteers that helped. We're really lucky here. We have pretty clean beaches compared to some places in the world. Our waste management and our infrastructure is pretty good here, but there is, obviously still anything we can get off the beach is going to be good because it's not going to impact the wildlife or any boaters or anything out there. So we're really thankful to all the volunteers. We have a very small staff of 6 year-round people, and so we couldn't do it without all these people. And just to dive a little bit into, this is our top 10 for litter. So this is all the sites combined. Unfortunately, cigarette butts still continue to top the top 10 list as they do worldwide. But we have, since 2018, we've been tracking smaller pieces. So plastic, foam, and glass that are like 10 centimeters or smaller, and breaking them up into categories. And as soon as we started tracking those smaller pieces, they immediately jumped into the top 10 list. So most of it is stuff that has just, been out in the ocean or left on the beach and broken down into smaller pieces over time. So that's why it's really important to do things, obviously, the first time, so they don't end up out there breaking down. So Durham, and basically Adams Point. This, some pictures I'll show you here from a cleanup we did with Oyster River High School students a couple years ago. And we do a lot of cleanups with school students. Also, a lot of businesses are involved in doing cleanups as a team building opportunity. So this just shows you, since 2018, it's been 386 pounds of litter picked up there. And it's not really a lot of big stuff that we find, so it all adds up really quickly, unfortunately. Last year we did 5 cleanups. So some cleanups or some beaches like Hampton Beach, the Rye beaches, we have a lot of interest in people coming down, and we do probably 20, 30, 50 cleanups at those beaches sometimes during the summer or during the year. But we're glad we can get up here when we can, because obviously whatever we can pick up here isn't going to wash down to those other beaches and not to the Gulf of Maine. And this was the top 10 from Adams Point. So again, lots of small things. And when you look at our top 10 list, you see that a lot of them have reusable alternatives. So, a lot of just made of plastic or disposable plastic, pieces of bottle caps and water bottles and things like that, if you kind of go back up the line, there's ways to prevent them kind of easily, you would think. And so if anybody here or online would like to get involved, we do have beaches you can adopt. We do a lot of private group cleanups. So if you ever want to come out and just do a beach cleanup, we've done a lot of cleanups with the town of Rye. Their Rye Beach Committee has organized some public cleanups, which has been a fun partnership. We do have public cleanups that go on next month. September is International Coastal Cleanup Month. So we'll have a lot of cleanups then, and there'll be cleanups all around the world, actually. And we also have volunteers that are trained to lead our beach cleanups as well, just to increase our capacity, just because we run out of staff eventually. So, and you can find all that information on our website or reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Anyone have a question? Okay, good.
Well, there was a lot of great information in your presentation, and I didn't know if you'd be willing to provide us sort of a copy of this presentation.
Sure.
So we could provide a link to it from our weekly Friday Updates e-newsletter.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I can email that over, and we also have a link online where we have all our kind of cleanup data combined, so we can send that over as well. So, great.
Well, thank you for your work.
Thanks so much for your time.
Very much.
Thank you.
And I believe, well, our next presentation is with Paul Rasmussen. Annual report for the planning board.
I don't, maybe he's on Zoom? I don't know.
I don't know.
No, he isn't.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll
We'll reschedule.
Another time.
Well,
It's summertime, you know, another time.
It's just interesting though, because normally when he has a report, he talks about it at the
Planning board?
planning board.
Ahead of time,
So
sure.
when I saw it on the item, I was sort of surprised because did you?
I don't remember him mentioning it. I do remember him mentioning he was going on vacation, so I wonder if there was maybe some miscommunication.
There might be some communication issue there,
Yeah.
because it was a surprise to me to see it on the agenda.
Okay.
And he wasn't at the Housing Task Force meeting today either, so I
Correct.
bet he's away.
And he wasn't at IMAC.
Okay. Yeah, so.
There you go.
There you
And
go.
he did
Okay.
say he
We have
wasn't going
lots
to be
of
at
evidence.
IMAC because he was in, I think he said he was in Europe.
Okay. Lots of evidence for why he's not here, so, all good. It happens. All right, so move on to item 11, which is unfinished business. The first of which is a public hearing, and,
Just, I didn't know if Michael's here to talk for him or not.
oh, I don't know. We were thinking that we might have Paul Rasmussen tonight, but we were just making sure you weren't speaking at all for the planning board or knew anything about that.
Oh, I have not heard anything about that.
Okay.
No, sorry.
Thank you, that's fine. All right, so the public hearing tonight for ordinance 2024-05, amending Chapter 175 zoning, Article 17. And I will make a motion. I move the Durham Town Council does hereby open the public hearing on ordinance 2024-05, amending Chapter 175 zoning, Article 17, Durham Historic District Overlay District, Section 175-93, identification of the historic overlay district to update the map and lot numbers of the historic district. Is there any-
Second.
Thank you. There's a second from Councilor Lund. Anyone here to speak to that? Anyone from the public?
Oh, do we need to vote officially to open the
Oh,
public
that's.
hearing?
We do need to.
We do, okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now is anyone here to address? All right. In that case,
Hearing none, I will move to close the public hearing. Second.
second from Councilor Darrell Ford, all right. Any discussion? We don't get a discussion, we're just opening and closing. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous, okay. So then the motion comes to us, the council. I move the Durham Town Council does hereby adopt ordinance 2024-05, amending Chapter 175 zoning, Article 17, Durham Historic Overlay District, Section 175-93, identification of the historic overlay district to update the map and lot numbers of the historic district.
Second.
Second from Councilor Lund. Any discussion?
I just want to say
Yes.
thank you to the town planner and to the historic commission, because I think all of the information was very clear. And so that made the explanation very easy to understand and incorporate.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. We should do a roll call vote for this motion. So we'll just go around and we can start.
Heather Grant, aye.
James Bubar, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay. And next, so we want to separate 11B and 11C. So in our council packet, we have them combined, but we're going to separate the two public hearings. So I move that Durham Town Council hereby opens the public hearing on ordinance 2024-06, amending Chapter 132, tax exemptions and credits, Section 132-4, service-connected total disability tax credit. Is there anyone here to address? Oh, sorry.
We need
a second. I know. So, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilor Friedrichs. I want to get things happening here.
It's on a roll.
All right. All those in favor, raise your hands. Anyone opposed? All right. It's unanimous. Thank you. Anyone here from the public to address this piece? Anyone on Zoom here to address this?
I'll note that, to my knowledge, we've just received one communication from Cardin Welsh that has been shared with the council regarding...
That's not on
That's
this
for the
one.
next one.
Yeah, that was not on the disabilities.
Yeah. So, seeing none?
I move that we
Hearing
close
none.
the public hearing.
Motion from
Second.
Councilor Ford, seconded by Councilor Bubar. All right. All those in favor? All right. So we'll go on to what shows up on our paperwork as motion 3. Yes, discussion? Or sorry,
No,
discussion.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was going to go on to motion, the next, the
We
motion.
closed
to-
the public hearing. Should
Yeah.
we vote on the...
So now I'm going to,
okay.
read the motion.
All right.
Yes,
in
and then
its
we can.
entirety?
yeah,
Okay, all right.
So I move that Durham Town Council hereby adopts ordinance 2024-06, amending Chapter 132, tax exemptions and credits, Section 132-4, service-connected total disability tax credit of the Durham Town Code. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Councilor Lund. So we're open to discussion, and we have Darcy with us tonight. Yes, in case you have any questions. She introduced it to us at the last meeting. Any thoughts, questions, concerns before we vote? Okay. In that case, it's time to vote. It'll be a roll call vote. Let's start.
Heather Grant, aye.
James Bubar, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
It's unanimous. All right. So we'll go to the other half of, let's see. So Durham Town Council hereby opens the public hearing on ordinance 2024-07, amending Chapter 132, tax exemptions and credit, adding Section 132-8, all veterans town code.
Are you making a motion to open the public hearing? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm making a
Yes.
motion to open the hearing.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second that.
Second, okay. From Councilor Grant. Anyone here to speak?
You want to vote on that?
Oh. Okay, sure. All those, that was all in favor, so, okay, anyone opposed? Okay, unanimous. Yes, sorry. Anyone here to, from the public to address this change?
As Administrator Selling said, Cardin Welsh, a former counselor, did write written comments, and I believe we all got them, about this part of the exemption.
People have questions, concerns they want to have addressed?
So if I could
Yes.
continue,
Yes, go ahead.
I think, Cardin was very good about the budgets and being fiscally responsible and keeping an eye on this, both the big details and the small details. And one of the things that struck me in his letter was that in the all veterans tax credit, a 90-day service it appears to me, and it appeared, what Cardin said was, if you served 90 days, you would be entitled to this credit. And that seemed like a very short period of time to be entitled to a credit when they would possibly be getting other benefits, and do get other benefits from being a part of a military that they voluntarily joined.
Right. Is that 90-day minimum requirement in the state law that authorizes this?
It
credit?
is in the state law, so we can't change it to 6 months or 1 year without changing the state law. So the state law says 90 days for the all veterans credit.
Yes.
So I had a really interesting conversation with Darcy Freer, the town's assessor, today about this issue. And Darcy had some thoughtful information that she was going to provide to you for us all to think about.
Yeah. And I just want to also address the 90 days. The 90 days is also in the optional veterans credit that we currently have that requires the dates of service, though.
Right.
So it's the same 90-day period. So the GAP veterans, when you identify them based on the periods that aren't covered under the optional, equivalates to about 25 years, 26 years worth of time periods that if you served during those time periods, you would not qualify. Since August 2nd of 1990 until present day, anyone that joins the service and has 90 days and it was discharged honorably qualifies. So that's 34 years worth of time period, because the president has never declared us not at war from the Persian Gulf War. So that 34 years covers anybody that 90 days and honorable, whether they saw combat or not saw it, like, doesn't matter on that end. And the 25 years, 26 years that I mentioned earlier, out of those, really only 15 of those years are kind of relevant because of the age range of the previous years before that. So the gap is from 1947 to 1950, and those residents would be 95 to 92 at this point and probably not living in their homes, maybe still living in their homes, but very few. And then the other age range is 1955 to 1961. So they'd be 87 to 81. So you probably have a few in that range. The big gap that the GAP veterans is trying to qualify for the all veterans is from 1975 to 1990. So after Vietnam up until Persian Gulf. And that's that 15-year span. So that was really it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If I am remembering correctly, which I don't know that I am, I thought it was about $26 average per household increase when you looked at the amount of increase that this additional tax credit would create in terms of the budget gap, and then you divided that approximately by the number of households in Durham. Obviously, it's not a totally equal distribution because I'm not sure how many commercial buildings there are in Durham, but relatively few. So I had come up with, in my mind, approximately about $26 annual increase per household. Do you have a sense of about how much of an increase this would represent per household? Does that sound within the range, or of what kind of how the redistribution might, what that might look like?
So I had estimated about a 2-cent impact to the tax rate overall, and for a $500,000 house, which is probably about the average assessed value for a single family house, it equates at the current tax rate to about a $10 increase in total for the year. So it's 26, depending on where the tax rate ends up, might be a little closer to that. It really just depends on that, and obviously higher house price, more increase.
And then I had one more question, which may be a better question for Todd, actually, but I did think it was an interesting point that, there are many people who dedicate themselves to public service who aren't necessarily, recognized for that, and that this veterans, tax credit, it doesn't differentiate between veterans who are most in need financially and those who, do not perhaps need that financial benefit. I was thinking back to the organizations that the town supports, and we've kind of capped those. Are there any organizations that have approached the town asking for assistance with funding that are for veterans and specifically look at veterans who are in financial need for some sort of circumstance?
Can I have a point of order?
Yes, please.
Should we not close the public hearing? This isn't a public hearing. We're having a council discussion, which would normally come after the hearing is closed.
Yeah. Sorry, we pulled our assessor right into the conversation. Yeah. We can do that.
Yeah, so if there's nobody from the public to speak on this, I will move to close the public hearing.
I will second that.
Councilor Lund, Councilor Ford, thank you very much.
Is there anyone left that wants to speak? I would ask the question. I don't think there is, but I would ask that question.
Well, I think she did.
But just in case, is there anyone on Zoom?
Not as far as I can tell.
So, all right, in that case, let's do a hand vote for closing. All right.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I will.
Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. So many different pieces here. So let me read the motion, and then we can discuss it as a council. All right. I move the Durham Town Council hereby adopts ordinance 2024-07, amending Chapter 132, tax exemptions and credits, adding Section 132-8, all veterans tax credit of the Durham Town Code. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Councilor Ford. All right. Discussion. Yes.
I've been thinking about this quite a bit. Council Welch has expressed reservations before about veterans credits, which has caused me to think. I am a combat veteran in Vietnam, but I support this motion because, and I've thought about this a lot, there's a big difference between being in the military and being in the civilian workforce. If you're in the military and you don't like an order that was given, you can't walk away. If you do, you get court-martialed and put in jail. If you're in a civilian job and you don't like what you're being told to do, or you find the operation of the organization, you can walk away. In the military, once you sign in and you swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States, you are in a different world, the military world. That's why it is that way, because it's an unpleasant occupation. It doesn't matter whether you're under fire like I was in Vietnam or in Washington doing other things. And that's why we have these kinds of things for people who raise their hand to volunteer, give up their self-determination for those days, because in the large picture, we all wish we didn't have to have a military. But we do, because there's a lot of bad people out there. And if that's why I think this is warranted for those people who sign into the military, give up their a lot of choices, knowing that. And that's why I'm supporting this. Whether you've been in combat or not, you are serving your country. You are becoming part of the force that helps keep this country free. And that's my thoughts on this.
I too have thought about it, and thinking that, sort of along the same lines, that people who sign up to be in the military, or maybe got drafted and had that choice, but they're offering their life to they're not just, I mean, I think it's beyond what one expects in most service jobs. In the military, you don't get to decide whether you're going to end up, whether the country's going to be at war or not. Those are things you can't predict. So my feeling is that if you're a veteran, you're a veteran, and I don't care whether you were, in terms of being able to give them a benefit, a sacrifice that I'm willing to make for their service.
I would note, however, that the fire personnel and the police personnel are willing to give their life
That's true.
in service to their community.
That's true. That's true. With the one caveat that Councilor Burton mentioned, yes.
Does anyone know if it's possible to only serve 90 days in the military? Do you have to sign up for longer
Without
than
being
that?
injured?
Well, if you're injured, that would be a different category, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, not these days.
Like So the 90 days, even though it says 90 days, you couldn't actually join the military for 90 days.
You would have to be released, and it has to be an honorable release in order to.
Right. So the only way it could happen would be if it were to happen in a way that you would also qualify for the service-connected total disability credit.
Which that, we understand 90 days or however many days, but the other, does anybody know what the minimum term of signing up for the military is?
3 or 4 years.
Well, yeah. It depends on when you joined and whether you enlisted or were drafted. But I'm not aware of anybody who was allowed to serve for a period of less than 1 year, barring a discharge for medical reasons.
The draft is kind of immaterial here. It's moot because it's been 60 years since we had a draft. So.
I do want to note that Mr. Hall has raised his hand, seeming to indicate that he would have an answer to that question.
Public hearing is closed.
Right, but we would have to reopen the public hearing. I just wanted to acknowledge Mr. Hall that he had raised his hand, though. I don't know if, Todd, you might be able to answer the question that I posed earlier, because I thought it was relevant to the points that Cardin Welsh had brought up.
Right, while we do provide support to a number of organizations that might, for one reason or another, include veterans, such as Meals on Wheels, the Visiting Nurses Association, none of them are targeted toward veterans exclusively.
And if I understand correctly, this is the $500 benefit we do for all military veterans except those in those gap periods that didn't serve in combat.
Well, it didn't serve during a
During
period
a period
of war. Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to say I really appreciate Councillor Burton and Councillor Needell's points. And I think for those reasons that this ordinance makes a lot of sense to me, and seeing that I do not think it would be a overly difficult burden on taxpayers to expand this benefit in recognition of the service provided by veterans, and that in many ways we don't support them enough, and that they're seeing that there is not an alternative that might be more targeted to better differentiate who most needs assistance, who most needs support. I think that this makes a lot of sense.
And another question for you, Darcy. This is an optional piece. So in other words, if I'm a veteran... No,
I think we can ask
I can talk to the
the town
assessor.
staff.
That's why that's why she's here.
We could ask questions of town staff.
And I've lost my train of thought. I mean, this is something that we're doing already for everyone except the gap veterans.
Correct, yes.
In town.
Yes.
So the change is to make them part of this.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And they do have to apply. So it's not that everyone will apply, and some people don't. And I know Jim had mentioned, Jim Rice, prior assessor, had mentioned that he knows of several people who don't feel they need the credit, and so they do not opt in to apply for the credit. So.
I mean, there's no guarantee that not everyone would opt in, but it is optional.
Correct, yes.
Any other questions or comments before we go to a vote? All right. So let's do a roll call vote. We can start again.
Heather Grant, aye.
James Blubar, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
That's unanimous to me. Thank you all. Thank you for your work.
Thanks, Darcy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're about as contemptible as you possibly can be. When I was drafted, I was going to back up Mr. Burton.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so approval of minutes is next. Anybody have any corrections, changes that you that are substantial that we need to discuss tonight?
I had one from, on page 8, my update from the Historic District /
Okay.
Heritage Commission. We should add the fact that the Heritage Commission voted to support the potential purchaser's application for a variance.
Okay. So you voted, can you give me the whole, you said voted to support.
Okay, but, the potential purchaser of the property said that he would need a variance to create an auxiliary dwelling unit in the historic portion of the property.
Okay. So this, you supported the request?
And we voted to support his application for a variance.
Okay.
The applicant for the variance doesn't own the property currently?
Not currently. Sorry.
My understanding is that he would need the variance in order to make it financially viable for him to purchase the property.
Yes.
At least that's what he stated when he met with the Heritage Commission.
And
We're hearing the variance tomorrow night.
Right.
Right, yes, I will be there representing the Heritage Commission.
This is the Garrison on Baghdad Road.
No, I understand.
Okay.
I'm just curious. I thought that the property owner would have submitted the variance request. But that's all right. We'll deal with that with you, though. That's good information.
All right. Otherwise, if people just send in any corrections they saw or needed. So I move that we approve the minutes from, what day was that? July 15th, 2024, as amended at this meeting.
Second.
Second from Councilor Lund. Let's go around. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I just thought we were going to do a hand vote.
Oh, okay, we'll do it. That's
I
fine.
was
It's the
getting
minutes. It's the
excited.
minutes. Hand vote's fine. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. For some reason, all this seems more complicated to me. Okay, our roundtable. Can we start? We'll start on this side.
Sure, you can start with me, but
Yeah.
the Lake Stewardship Subcommittee has not met since our last meeting, so I have nothing new to report.
That's absolutely fine. Yes.
Okay, so the Historic District / Heritage Commission met on August 1st. We presented a preservation project of the year to Scott and Karen Letourneau for their adapted reuse of the old town hall as the Tideline Public House. We also approved the installation of a granite bench in Town Landing Park in memory of Phyllis Bennett and Ray Bellis. For anybody listening who does not know the story, Phyllis Bennett was the reporter who, in the fall of 1973, broke the story of Aristotle Onassis' plans to build an oil refinery on Durham Point. I had the pleasure of meeting her on a couple of occasions. We also had a discussion about the budget. We voted to recommend level funding of the HDC budget in 2025. The Energy Committee met on August 6th, and we had a session related to the housing, in which we, in view of the fact that changes in state law mean that we can no longer require meeting energy codes for general building permits, we voted to support making that a condition for the density bonus in workforce housing, which we understand we are allowed to apply this sort of thing for any density bonuses. There was also a discussion regarding the the new default rate for CPCNH. For the period starting August 1st, we've made the Granite Plus plan, which is the 33% renewable plan, the default rate, because that rate is cheaper than the benchmark Eversource rate.
Anything else? Any questions for Councilor Lund? Councilor Burton?
I'd like to use my time to do something positive. As I walked Wagon Hill Farm today, I noted how well the area looks that Portsmouth did their project on. The grass is growing up, and you would almost never know what happened. And I thought it would be a good occasion, and I'll put it in a motion or not, but I said the Durham Town Council should direct Administrator Selig to send a letter of appreciation to appropriate Portsmouth leaders expressing our gratitude for their cooperation in causing the recently completed project on Wagon Hill Farm to do the least possible disruption of the site and leave it almost as they found it, or words to that effect. Todd is an excellent wordsmith. But they really did, they could have gone through the 40-foot easement they had. They had a plan to come up the road, which I didn't think would work. So full disclosure, and then they bought the idea of putting a way over on the side and they agreed to that. And now they've done a really nice job, and the grass is actually coming back, and the road is shut off, and I think we should thank them for what they did.
Plus, we got water to the barn and to the main house.
We did.
As part of that deal.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, going to be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a good example of how two municipalities can actually work together to the greater good. And with so much negativity running around these days, I thought it would be nice to do something positive.
Do we need to turn that into a motion? I think, can we just pass that
Or
on
maybe
to
just a
you?
thank you
I'm
note.
happy to send the letter, it's great. Motion or not, very well deserved, so whatever you'd like.
Does that sound?
I'm happy to just.
Yep.
Nodding heads,
Yep.
shrugging shoulders, we're good?
Unanimous head nodding.
That one will be hard for the minutes taker to hear, but won't necessarily see in the future. Okay, anything else, Councilor Brennan? Thank you.
I know I don't recall going to any more meetings since the last meeting.
Great.
So the Department of Parks and Recreation met on July 23rd, and they put together their the subgroup working on the fees that the council has been asking about. They put together their spreadsheet that they'll be presenting, I believe, to the administrator as part of the budget process. Also, the Parks and Rec are going to be reporting to this body on September 9th. So some of the directors' updates and other information in detail I'll leave for that presentation on the 9th of what they're doing. That was presented to the committee and to be refined at the next meeting for a presentation to this council. The committee's also working on the budget 2025 budget request and what they think they may need and how much revenue besides the request, how much revenue they believe they'll have. You may have seen the survey in the Friday minutes from UNH on Jackson's Landing and Woodbridge Park. I hope you all might have had a chance to fill it out, send it in. And they are continuing their work and on schedule. We hope to be getting some more word in the fall. I'm not sure they'll completely wrap up by then, but they've gotten a lot of good information and they're moving forward. And now it seems too that we're seeing some more collaboration between Parks and Rec and other bodies, including on this Trails project update. We're working with the Conservation Commission and the Land Stewardship Committee. And there's going to be monthly trail walking open to the public, but I believe sponsored by these 3 different groups. And those are coming up forward. The Seacoast Economic Development Stakeholders Group met via Zoom on July 23rd, and they talked about liquor license advocacy. Liquor licenses being one of the fundamental parts of a restaurant, and tourism and retail in our towns. Also a presentation from a field staffing agency, updates on where we are with HR. I would like to present, or at least talk about a couple other things. Last time I mentioned when we, last meeting, I mentioned when we approved the Energy Committee appointment that there was no limit on the term that they were being appointed to. It was for an indefinite, undefined term. And it turns out that that is true on the Energy Committee, that is true on the Human Rights Committee, and it's true on IMAC. And I would like, if possible, to perhaps schedule a time that we could talk, certainly no more than an hour, could be quicker, but about whether to have all of our committees the same. And the reason to take it a step further is because in the Human Rights Commission, there's a further step that we may need to modify the bylaws of that, and perhaps make changes that human rights may want to consider, such as instead of the administrator being a full member of that body, he instead be an ex officio member, meaning he can attend and go to all the meetings and be a part of it, but he's not voting on an issue before it comes to the council, and then he's a part of it, but not a voting member immediately. And the same would be true of the chairman of this board, Sally, who is a member of it now, but it would be also appropriate for her to be ex officio as her role as chairman of the town council, just as Todd, his role as administrator of the town. They have a seat at the table at Human Rights. So in fairness to them, I did talk with Sally, and Sally said she would bring it up to that commission. Is there anything else that they may or may not want to do in terms of changes and bylaws changes that this group would have to vote on? So that, and the suggestion that I would make, and others could make others, but that terms would be 3 years, certainly renewable, but you're appointed for a 3-year term. And see what happens after that. Now, some of the other committees, we do kind of re-up different committees. Doesn't seem like we re-up all the members of every committee every year, but some of them we do and some of them we don't. But it would just be to have a future conversation perhaps about just getting our committees lined up with terms.
Yeah, on the subject of the Energy Committee, I had a discussion on that point, on the subject of term limits offline with the chair of the Energy Committee. He was under the impression that the Energy Committee did have term limits of 2 years, although my recollection is in all of the documentation we've seen, it's been no term limit. So I believe he would be agreeable to a change of instituting terms where you would have to reapply after 3 years.
Renewable term, sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and when that gets stood up, we probably want to stagger the terms so that we're not turning everybody over at once.
Just like this council.
Yes.
Yes.
And just like the other boards that have 3-year terms, those are also staggered.
Yes.
I just had a question for Councilor Friedman on Parks and Rec. Forgive me if it wasn't you, but somebody had mentioned the Stratford County Active Transportation Plan was available. And I was wondering if that was something that Parks and Rec had looked at, had a chance to look at, or if that had been shared with them.
No, I don't believe they've seen that, or I've not seen it, and I usually see a lot of what comes out of Stratford County. So if you wanted to share it, and I can further share it with the committee, perhaps
I'll make
we
a
can
note
get
to
it
do
in
that.
people's hands that way.
Yeah.
Okay. I did have a couple more comments, if I could, on different subjects. On cat tracks, we saw something about cat tracks in the Friday updates, and Durham pays for Fitbit. It's something, and I try to pay attention to everything. It's something I did not know about, that we could ride bikes for free, that Durham pays for that, and that perhaps we get that notice, or just let people know more, a little bit more about it, and the benefits, and where we pick up a bike, and how long you have it, and how much it costs an individual. I mean, who's running it, where are the bikes? Since we're, so that's just a comment I guess I'm making in this roundtable. Also, I think we all received an update about this Australian company that's headquartered in Australia that has established their first US-based manufacturing and application center here in Durham called Speed. They're a 3D printing company. They are, hang on one second.
Can they 3D print affordable housing?
That is actually something that is happening. It can be happening in remote places even. So it's not that far in the future, like it is happening now. Excuse me, I get my
I
note on
remember
that.
some of it is, I don't know if it's that group, because there's several of them that are developing over at the tech center, but there's stuff related to more like waterborne kinds of things, but they also had somewhere they could repair on site by doing, like I said, the 3D on metal and doing repairs in the field kind of things. But so there's a number of different things going on there, and that one I know was announced about like 6 months ago originally, I think.
Yes.
That one there, but it is amazing that the things that they're really drawing interested businesses to took the tour of that, and you've got Ford testing stuff in there, and ag kind of equipment, all kinds of things are going on. It's just an amazing. It's a really fun place to look around at, and I just get all giddy about
there's
anything
the
related to
Olson
manufacturing.
Advanced. Would be the Olson Advanced Manufacturing Center.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's where they're being,
that's where they're
working out of, and it's a great tenant and a great company for Durham, and I welcome them to town and appreciate them being here.
It's pretty cool stuff.
And speaking of UNH and advanced manufacturing, they also said that they are creating a space and technology hub here at the, is it the Olson Center there as well, or possibly is it the Edge, their new venture? But
I've not heard anything about the location of this. UNH does have a history of involvement with space flight programs, and I have done some of that work in my professional life.
Okay. It's the region's first space technology hub is how they describe it. And so really, again, welcome some of that innovative research and effort here, being done here in Durham.
Thanks.
So those are my comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see, Human Rights Commission, the next meeting is October 8th at 3:30 to 5 o'clock. At our July, 25th meeting, we had a presentation by Danielle Heaton on 21 Senses, and this is an organization that Leslie Schwartz, Durham resident, knew about and encouraged Danielle to come to see us. They focus on sensory processing issues. You may have heard about these. They create quiet spaces at events. So like at Durham Day, there's a place for people, they could use the Dara Salon to go to a quiet space. So people who, there's too much stimulus, too much going on. They need to be able to settle or find a quiet place. And it really helps families be able to include all their members, including children or adults in the family who have sensory issues. They've been doing this for a number of years in Durham at no cost. Other communities have been paying, but they've been doing it at no cost here in Durham, sort of using us as the guinea pig town to see what they could do here. They wanted to know about financial, how to maybe request some financial backing. I suggested that they put something together to submit this fall, so it would be there in time for budget. And at our October meeting, we'll also talk about supporting that effort on their part to find funding here in town. They do it for a number of events in town every year. We also spent much of that meeting talking about the draft resolution on free speech, and we had a number of people in the public that came to speak. So a week later, on July 30th, we had a work session so we could actually have the time to discuss the resolution, and Councilor Register was with us, and Councilor Burton was here to present the resolution and for us to about looking at the wording of the resolution that you have with you tonight. And I mentioned tonight when President Chilton was here that I think before too long we'll put out a request for questions that you would like to have addressed by either her or Mr. Cronin regarding our relationship with UNH. So I would just anticipate that that will happen at some point in the near future, so that we can start that, a council discussion with them too. And I think that's it for me. Yes.
So the planning board has met twice since the last town council meeting. The first kind of most progressed item was around accessory freestanding solar arrays. So we did have a public meeting, and we will be sending that to the town council now, an amendment that would allow for freestanding solar arrays that are an accessory use to be reviewed under minor site plan process. And basically that just makes it a little bit easier for freestanding solar that is not being developed as an additional business and supporting an existing use, for it to be a little more cost effective in terms of the design plan. So the minor site plan process does not require as much paperwork, so you don't have to pay engineers or money to get that approved. So the feeling was that we would still have plenty of opportunities for neighbors to be notified. The town planner could always change it to a full planning board review if it was felt that the scope of the project merited that, but this would otherwise kind of make solar a more affordable thing particularly for our non-residential uses. We also have been working on a workforce housing amendment, which is going to have its public hearing this Wednesday. So please tune into that if you're interested, or check out the draft of that ordinance is available online on the town's website. Do you have
I have a question
Yeah.
about that. I was actually intending to speak to Mr. Rasmussen when he made his presentation today about some pretty basic issues I have with the report that we're seeing, and I debated to come to the public hearing to let the planning board do their work, then bring it up. I don't want to surprise them. I'll give you an example. The workforce housing talks about rental property only, and I fundamentally disagree with that in that I think it should be sale and rental, and there's ways to do it, and I'd like to talk about that. There are a couple of other issues, and not sure the best way to go forward with that. I don't want to waste the planning board's time to have them vote on an issue, have it come before us, and like, no, you're not even talking about something like that. So I don't know whether to go to the public hearing or not, wait till it comes here. I'm just passing along that there are some fundamental issues I have with the language as written. I can tell you more if you wanted, but that's an example.
I think, and I'd love for Todd to jump in if I misspeak or you have other ideas, but I think that it would be very helpful to have your comments earlier in the process rather than later. And you could either do that by attending as an individual resident at that point, or you could submit something in writing to the planning board, again, speaking, as an individual resident at that point. Since it wouldn't be, we don't want to represent a council member before it's come to council. But I think that probably people would prefer to have input sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Is there anything to add to that? Okay.
Good.
And then the last item we're working on is we're almost through the zoning definitions and the suggestions that the town council made, and adopting or not those as the planning board sees fit. So we're getting close, and that should be back before the town council, I would think hopefully in September. So that's it.
Can I ask one more question about
Yeah.
that? If I were to write something, it would be to the chairman of the committee, to Mr. Barrett, and to you and as well? I mean, who would this go to?
If you email it to Michael, he will, or to Paul, they'll ensure that it gets out to the entire planning board. It's too late to be included as a printout in the packets.
Yeah?
But Michael will probably print it out in paper to have at the meeting on Wednesday, just like we do here if there's additional information.
Okay.
All right, or you
Okay.
can send to Tracy Cutler, who is the administrative assistant for the planning department.
Okay.
But they'll make sure, they do everything blind copy, like with the council, to ensure there's no discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Integrated Waste Management met on August 7th. We opened with Erin Hale, not in her capacity as a member of the Conservation Commission, but as her role at UNH leading the capstone project. And so we had a very good discussion with her. Obviously, we're looking for support from some of the senior students. And so she's looking, she's not sure who's back and what's going on right yet, so we expect to have somebody soon. And then the rest of the meeting was actually consumed by the Housing Task Force and their presentation, which I wouldn't want to steal any of their thunder because they're coming to a committee near you.
It's true.
Which I think is a good idea. They're going to all the committees, almost. So it makes it easy to for them to get feedback before it gets into a public hearing setting. And that was the only meeting I attended since the last town council meeting.
Okay, great. Yes.
All right, so Housing Task Force. They talked a little bit about some, like moving into some analysis of the downtown area. I think everybody was copied on the concern from Todd about, bringing some of the focus as we get through the workforce housing section. The Housing Task Force was participating in that and some of the ideas, and then it got shifted to the planning board. Now we're thinking a joint, somehow like a little subgroup might want to work on the downtown area. So there was some discussion area. So more to come on that, I'm sure, as we decide what we should do between the two groups. But we don't want people, we did see that as part of the Housing Task Force a little bit, but we don't want to be duplicating efforts and doing things. But definitely there's some study that needs to go on downtown on what we can do in housing. We also then did talk about, I gave an update to the other members of the Housing Task Force on the meetings that we've had with the different groups. Historic Commission, Energy Committee, and IMAC have all been accomplished in terms of presentation of housing in Durham and workforce housing specifically. We had some great feedback. I went to those 3 meetings as well to support Sally Tobias, who was doing the presentations. And we got some really good feedback, and it was feedback for the individual, not just as their role within those different boards. So it was very uplifting to understand the people's positive response about the need for housing, and the understanding too of lot sizing and how did we get here. I think the interesting part was really on the Historic Commission saying, there wouldn't be a building here that would be in compliance related to the historic district. And that's probably a little bit over generalization, but in general, there'd be a lot of non-compliant properties. And we can learn a lot from some of the things that were built size-wise and lot size-wise. So there was a lot of really kind of fun feedback from the Historic Commission. Energy Committee talked both personally about it, and their understanding for need for housing. They also brought up that denser housing and smaller housing obviously is also more energy efficient. So I think that we had some good dialogues on that, and we were bringing everybody up to date on that. Let's see, was there anything else? No, I think that's about it. We also did do on the workforce housing amended, just so everybody was up to date on it. And we have more meetings on with these different groups. The land stewardship is on the 14th, conservation is on the 26th, Ag Committee on September 9th, and right now Parks and Rec is at the 24th of September, and I think we're trying to nudge that in, whether we do or not, I don't know. And
So Human Rights is not meeting till October, so do you think you'll be still looking for this information in October?
I don't know, I think Michael's been coordinating some of those, so I haven't been involved specifically, I just sit there as a, different voice, I guess. The other interesting part is we were invited to do a walkthrough of a Dover property that just finished development. It's on Sophie/Banner Drive, which is pretty close to the back side of the high school, just up this way a little bit. So it's a 7.5 acre property, and there's 31 units on that, and it's a combination of single family homes and townhomes / apartment building looking things at the back, which actually sort of addresses one of the members of IMAC had communicated that they like to see houses, they don't like to see apartments, right? But this particular property starts with the homes at the front, we make a right, and it's just really nicely developed designs are nice. And then at the end are the larger buildings. So from a sightline perspective, people concerned with that get what they need, and with the more volume of the housing at the back, the visuals less impactful, but it's still a beautiful property on those as well. So I think anybody can sign up for it. It's on August 27th at 4:30, and it's 31 units on 7.5 acres. If we had single-family homes here on a 7.5 acre lot, we'd get 14 units, and this development got 31 dwelling units. So I think that those are what she described as being gentle density. So I said that's a new term to start using, gentle density. And that is it, unless you...
I have a question. And again, I'm not sure where this information came from, but I remember hearing more than once that some of the student housing developers who look specifically at that market, at least in April, we're finding that they were only about 80% occupied downtown. They were trying some new marketing strategies, some folks actually lowering their rates, others just trying to advertise in different ways. Does anyone, if not you, anyone else on the council think it would be interesting to know if those properties are now at full occupancy or if we're still seeing some unoccupied occupancy in Durham?
We didn't have a representative. We've had a representative on the housing task force, that managed the, whatever, I can't remember which properties they were. Madberry Street.
Madberry Commons.
And I haven't heard of an update on that lately, so it's something we should reach out on and get an update on.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that something that Sally Tobias would know, or her contacts
She could
would
reach
know?
out. We can reach out on that. I'll take an action on it. We'll see how they've been doing. Yeah, I think they'll have it. I mean, boy, I'd be mad if I had rented for the school year and they started dropping the prices on those. I think that they would find that difficult to do, but I think that they can make more money on 80% than they can putting people in at less. But
yeah, I think it's just interesting.
It is, yeah.
Relevant to the discussion. So.
Yeah, they saw that coming when the announcement came out last year or a year and a half ago that the UNH was strategically putting, the first 2 years on campus. And they know they've been watching it and they've been counting it. And I think last year they were seeing indications that this year was going to be light. So let's see what they're doing about it.
Right. I have heard that depending on how their financing is structured, it can be difficult for them to reduce their rents because that reduces the value of their building, which is the collateral on the loan.
Well, yeah. I mean, you need to think about the units that have been resold out at the cottages, Orion over here, or whatever, I think that was the right name, right? If you think how many are in there and how much they pay per month, it's insane how much money they make in a month, let alone in a year. And even at 80%, they're poor. The money's just insane.
Right.
Just add it up.
Right. I would think that at this late date, they're unlikely to get much additional interest because the school year is starting by the end of the month. So.
Exactly.
I mean,
But-
there are plenty of people looking for rental units who aren't students, so that some properties were starting to pivot. And I think the question is,
whether they will.
if it's really, do we have
sustainable.
empty units in Durham that aren't being utilized in the middle of the housing crisis?
I knew some Canadian developers that were in the office market, and there was big vacancies, and they were like, we don't see them as vacancies, we see them as inventory, and we'll hold them at our price and fill them when we can. So there are people that can devalue your property if you lower your prices and jeopardize your loan, so they might be reluctant to do that. I don't know the motivation of the local landlords, but it can look at it alternate ways.
And also, I think people that are desperate for housing, if it's affordable enough, or they can afford it, they would move in there. The question is will they find the environment sustainable, or will they leave after the first year? But I mean, a lot of times for housing, it'd be amazing whether they would do that and lock in, because it is very difficult if you're trying to transfer into this state. It's insane trying to find a place to live, and that's been true for over 10 years. It's not easy. We had a lot of people in our company that were coming in from Germany and, anywhere in Europe, and they were going to be there for, say, a 2-year stint at our company, and it just drove them crazy trying to find housing.
My experience from being a renter back in the 1990s was that even then this state was chronically short on rental housing.
So I see that. Trust me, it was a tough year. 2014 was not a good year anyway for my move. Anyway, exciting things going on in housing. I'll check with Sally on that.
Anything else before we give the floor to our town administrator?
Just two very brief things. The first is that while looking through boxes in the lower level archives, Karen Edwards identified additional non-public minutes from the year 2000. So those will be coming to the council to unseal at our next meeting. So it's very exciting. And
Is there some way that we can find out what was said in those?
Oh, yes.
You get them
just for the fun of it?
They'll be coming to the council at the next meeting.
Unless I missed it, the last time we got them, I didn't see anything about what was actually in those minutes.
oh, you should have received the minutes to
There were?
review.
Yeah.
Were they not
Yeah,
part
they
of the
were
packet?
like a set of notes in the sorry. So they're not in the packet posted online because they can't be. That would make them public. So Karen sends them out by email as an attachment. So you have to look for them separately in your email.
I didn't see that.
Okay.
Cool.
Get mine on paper.
Yeah. And the second item is we had in the printing of the water sewer bills from this most recent quarter, we had a couple of glitches from the printer. The most significant of which was that half of the billing included on the return to address the town of Durham, Maine. So
I bet
I
they
got
told
one
you
of
about
those.
that.
yeah, Durham, Maine has gotten a lot of payments from Durham, New Hampshire.
Did you get a thank you
Water
note?
and sewer billers. So Durham, Maine has been very gracious, and they've been forwarding all those to the town clerk in Durham. New Hampshire.
Right. I had a conversation in the town clerk's office when I went to pay the water and sewer bill and discovered this mistake that they are taking steps to make sure that anybody who in good faith mailed their water and sewer payment to Durham, Maine won't be charged late fees.
That's right.
As long as they mailed it in time.
That's exactly right. That's all I had.
I know Durham, Maine well. It's halfway between Freeport and Brunswick. They need the money.
They probably do.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly.
Next quarter, they're going to have my address on it.
The reason for that particular mix-up was that the printing contractor that we use for sending out our billing also has Durham, Maine as a client.
And that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. In which case, we will move on to our new business. This is discussion and possible adoption of Resolution 2024-17, expressing the town of Durham's interest in partnering with the UNH to ensure that our constitutional right of freedom of speech for Durham residents and visitors within the community remains unimpeded, and emphasize de-escalation in all encounters. Councilor Burton, do you want to present this?
Well, I think yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to compliment Tom Cronin. He has sat through more meetings than anyone. In his previous role at UNH, he was representing the university in the State House, and I was on House Education, and Tom was there all the time. It was so important, and he was highly respected by all members of that committee, both Republicans and Democrats. And I don't know when he slept, but it was a good experience for this. I was really concerned when we did the previous resolution on the ceasefire that we were accused of bypassing the HRC. And I particularly was concerned we were accused of promoting the anti-Semitism. And what thinking about it a lot, it was a wrinkle in the process, and there was a right to be concerned. So what we've done now, process-wise, is right that wrong, and included the HRC in what was an important decision. And I think because of that, we've got a much better resolution, because it went to the HRC for their consideration, and that's why I'm really pleased with how that all worked out, and I compliment our chair for her role in making sure that happened. What you see here is essentially what we passed before. Todd has done some really good research and included links in here. I think it accomplishes what we were trying to say, that let's work together to make sure this doesn't happen again this way. And but it also asserts the town's interest in making sure that free speech is available to all people in town, whether they're on the university campus or in the town itself. And secondly, it also establishes the HRC as a really good place to air those issues. And the people on that group were really good at taking the time to consider them.
Do you want to read the motion? Do you want to?
Read the whole resolution?
Yeah, number 14 there at the bottom, just the bottom of the, I was going to say
No,
just
the
just the motion.
The motion.
At the bottom. Yeah, you don't have to read the whole resolution. But for anyone who...
The Durham Town Council does hereby adopt resolution number 2024-17, expressing the town of Durham's interest in partnering with the University of New Hampshire to ensure that our constitutional right to freedom of speech for Durham residents and visitors within the community remains unimpeded, and to emphasize de-escalation in all encounters. I make that motion.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Councilor?
Okay. I had a couple of minor wording suggestions that Robin Moore also brought up. On page 2, the second whereas, the nor should be changed to or. And in the final whereas, delete the second additional, because the word additional appears twice and you only need it once.
She also has...
Where was the second word? Is that on?
Oh, okay, yeah. It's
second line of the last whereas.
Second line of the last whereas. The word additional appears twice. I think the second one should be deleted.
She also has one for the whereas at the top of the page. New Hampshire enjoys a reputation, enjoys instead of has a reputation.
I think it has this one.
And did you mention the last one, uphold? Yeah, you did. Did you? She had another. There were 4 changes she mentioned.
The fourth one she withdrew. That was the one about the suffragists.
Yeah, no, there was one to the town of Durham to uphold these principles. instead of
Oh, okay.
affirm.
Okay. Instead of affirm, people.
So we replace affirm with uphold in the last, in the.
Is that under the now therefore be it
Right.
resolved section?
Right.
Second to last line.
And I'd like to add a small wordsmithing thing, which is in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th whereas, university system of New Hampshire's values are the constant and immutable guide to its instead of all, its institutional decisions, so that we can clarify that UNH's values are not the guide for all institutions' decisions. They are the guide for UNH's decisions. They're not the guide for the town of Durham's decisions. They might differ at points.
Yes.
So it is in a similar way in the bottom of the first page in the motion where it says to emphasize de-escalation in all encounters. I don't think you have de-escalation in all university encounters, but you certainly would have them in potentially violent encounters. I mean, you might say it a different way. It's not every encounter at the university that you would have a de-escalation emphasis. So we're talking about controversial, potentially violent. I might, and that's in the motion. What's that?
As necessary.
Is necessary, something, but not all encounters with the university.
So where is that?
That would be on the motion itself, in the second to last word, that it be, that second to last word, all, be modified, perhaps, by all de-escalation in all, I had potentially violent, or it's said later in the thing, in all conflict, but I don't think conflict encounters is a word, but
Well, it could be
it's not all encounters.
just conflict and not include encounters.
I think I wrote in all such encounters at some point.
But what the motion says is to ensure the right of free speech and for Durham residents and visitors within the community remains unimpeded, and to emphasize de-escalation in all encounters. It's like, all encounters of what?
Yeah, Councilor Burton's suggestion of adding such before encounters, I think would do the job.
No.
No?
Such what?
Because we don't refer to any encounters before that.
It
so.
doesn't refer to anything, yeah.
Well, fortunately, they won't read the motion, they'll be reading the resolution.
Okay, so, all right, so the resolution is what we'll focus on. I will say, though, also, if I could continue.
Yes.
That in the agenda description, where it says concerned by the level of violence inflicted on students, I think that is somewhat unfair. I don't believe there were any broken bones anywhere. I don't think anybody went to the hospital. So to call it a level of violence, I think is extreme to call it that. So I'll leave it at that.
It wasn't a pillow fight.
There were no broken bones, and no one went
I
to the
think
hospital.
there were some of the students were treated.
But
Again, that's in the agenda description. It's not-
Exactly.
Yes, it's a
So,
council
and
communication.
if we get into the thing itself, on page 2, the second whereas, where it says the town of Durham dispatch law enforcement agents equipped with lethal tactical assets.
Wait a minute.
This is in the
You said
whereas.
the second
Second
whereas?
page.
The second,
two,
page 2,
Second
the
whereas
second
on
whereas.
page 2.
Yeah.
This is page,
So it's, the head of it is a web link, and then there's a whereas and then a whereas.
oh, okay. Yeah. I
So,
didn't read far
where-
enough down.
Where it says equipped with lethal tactical assets, is a gun a lethal tactical asset?
Yeah, Professor Meyerowitz in his public comment described it as an AR, which is a military grade rifle.
I understand that.
But-
And
If you're going to suggest we take that out,
I'm just suggesting that what was there, or what the objection is to military-style weapons and equipment, which is being passed down from the military, as I understand it, to some local law enforcement.
Madam Chair, can I respond to
Well,
that? Okay, I'm sorry.
only because Councilor Ford hasn't had a chance to say a lot, so I was going to.
I was going to suggest that the second whereas on the second page be eliminated from this, because what it seems to me, it seems like it's a passing little shot at Governor Sununu, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with the resolution, which is Durham's interest in partnering with the University of New Hampshire to ensure that our constitutional right to freedom of speech. It's about our relationship with UNH. That's nothing to do with the governor or him sending whatever. I think it does belong there, in my opinion.
I would agree, and I would take it out too, the whole paragraph. But.
Councilor Burton.
I sent the picture of the state police officer with the AR-15 to our chief of police in Durham and asked him to confirm if it was in fact an AR-15, which will fire automatically or single shot a 5.56 millimeter bullet. And I know from firsthand, having carried one in Vietnam, that'll do some serious harm, and I consider it lethal. And that's why it's in there.
But, excuse me, a regular gun that an officer carries is also a lethal tactical asset, isn't it? So that's my point, is that what you're talking about, I can tend to agree with, in that we're talking about military-type weaponry and equipment that is not normal for a police department to carry in this kind of incident.
Correct.
They're
That's
always
why-
going to have a gun in their pocket, aren't they? Aren't our officers armed always?
But it's, can I continue?
Yes.
They purposely carry him in a holster out of sight. The officers that showed up at this rally had them out, and that automatically raises tension when you see them. It also raises the possibility it could misfire. We had as many casualties from that kind of thing where I was.
Friendly fire.
Yeah, and there's no kind of weapon in an event like this. What were they there for? You only carry those if you're going to shoot somebody. And I don't know if they were going to shoot. The students weren't armed. There was not one single mention that any of the students had any kind of weapon whatsoever. And I think this is important. It gave me a chill to think that on our campus, state police would come with AR-15s, which can be fired automatically or semi-automatically, with a full clip in it. I asked the police chief, is this really a lethal? Because I had the picture. He said, and he emailed me back, yes, it is. And that's why it's in here. I mean, this was serious stuff.
Could I finish my remarks? So I hear what you're saying, and I would agree with you about that point, and that I just think it should be described better than lethal tactical assets, if you're going to use it at all. And I would also agree with, perhaps you take out that paragraph, but go on, if you don't mind. It talks about the sit-in, in the next whereas, talking about the sit-ins and public policy, etc. For example, now, I've followed politics and the like for a long time, and forgive my ignorance, I don't know what the bonus army is, and I don't know what Dixon versus Alabama is.
So,
Anybody?
Dixon versus Alabama was a lawsuit which established students' right to protest on campuses. The bonus army, I'm not sure, but I think that it's an opportunity to educate ourselves and the public as well to look up some of these references. I think that it's not a terrible thing if people use this to learn more, whether it's using the links that are provided. Maybe we provide another link there.
I would say that your examples, without those, make the point of we've had a history, and these are some examples. I just don't know those references, and to make, I don't know what they are, and it'd be hard for me to vote on them without knowing what they are.
The bonus army was a protest which, if my memory is correct, was from the 1930s, involving people who had been in the military, which if it was at that time, it would presumably have been World War I. I don't recall what details of the protest was about, other than that it felt that they were not being treated fairly.
I think we have a,
Yeah, so the Bonus Army was a group of 43,000 demonstrators, 17,000 veterans of the U.S. involved in World War I, their families and affiliated groups who gathered in Washington, D.C. in mid-1932 to demand early cash redemption of their service bonus certificates. Organizers called the demonstrators the Bonus Expeditionary Force, BEF, to echo the name of World War I's American Expeditionary Forces. The media called it the Bonus Army.
I would like to see the Bonus Army and Dixon versus Alabama removed, but that's a point that I'm just bringing up. And in the last whereas, where we crossed out the additional de-escalation measures, but someone said conflict de-escalation. Is that redundant in this? The benefit of hindsight, additional steps to include conflict de-escalation measures, or maybe just it doesn't need conflict, but it says non-lethal crowd control measures, like we should have changed, and there weren't any lethal crowd control measures.
It makes it sound like there was.
Yeah, and there were not. So, again, maybe they didn't even need to bring the firepower
Actually,
that they came with, but there wasn't any lethal action taken.
You have to understand that some of these whereases, including the one about the involvement of the governor, were added at the recommendation of the Human Rights Commission.
we did,
Well, you put it in, that's been
the
the most...
governor of New Hampshire part? That came from Curtis.
Well, you
That's
can, it was in the draft that you sent out after the meeting.
It was in the draft that we,
Okay.
yes.
Curtis.
You didn't take it out. So, anyway, I think we should pick this to death, but why don't we, you know what it's in it, let's vote on it.
I do want to speak a little bit more to that paragraph about the governor, and I'm not interested in taking side swipes at the governor, but the reason that I think that that's important in there, and perhaps saying military grade weapons is a better description. But I'm not sure if everyone was able to watch the recordings of the Human Rights Commission from these two meetings, but it really struck me when Councilor Register outlined it as there are 3 reasons to be really concerned with how things were handled. One is that potentially a set of people had their freedom of speech, their rights to express themselves curbed or curtailed in a non-judicious way. There are issues about whether they actually violated the permit. There's issues about whether that was being applied fairly. There's questions there. 2, that the response created a public safety issue. Really touches home a lot in that bringing automated rifles that are preloaded into a civilian arena. I mean, it struck me when Councilor Register and Councilor Burton as well, I think, talked about their experience in the military, and Councilor Register was saying that he did peacekeeping missions as a Marine, and they would not go with loaded ARs on these missions. So when the Marines are not bringing these around for crowd control, I think that just reinforces that it is an escalation to bring them in. It creates a public safety issue because what if there was a misfire? What if, a car backfired and freaked someone out? There's no place for automated weapons and preloaded weapons to be coming to, a protest event. And so for me, that point is really important. So I just wanted to restate that a little bit from the Human Rights Commission meetings.
The other thing I think it's in the governor's role, he immediately went on headlines in the press. There's this anti-Semitic protest going on fomented by people outside of the state, and we're going to stomp it. I mean, that was basically what, if you read that article, it's very provocative and inaccurate. And so that's why, if, for example, if the Durham police had been called in to handle it, they handled student protests. I mean, having organized anti-Vietnam War stuff back in the 70s, we never had this happen because they were planned out ahead of time. The Durham police cooperated, the university police cooperated, no one was armed, no one was hurt, and we had hundreds of people out in front of T Hall. But this time the governor took it over, and he took control, and he said, this is an anti-Semitic off-campus group that's phoning, and we should stop it. And he did. He sent his state troopers over here in full battle gear with machine guns to make sure that those students were put down. And that's why it's in here.
So, Councilor
Yeah, I don't think they have machine guns, but that's okay. I agree with everything you just said, and I agree with everything you just said. My point is, you were both talking about what the governor did. You're not talking about what UNH did. And UNH is the subject of this resolution. So as long as that's in there, I don't think I can vote for this resolution.
I wonder if that paragraph
If you want, you can make a separate resolution, about the governor. It'd be all right.
I wonder if that paragraph were clarified a little bit, asking UNH to work together with Durham to develop a response for future attempts to send in military-grade weapons and how to respond to that. Maybe that's a way of making it about a conversation between UNH and Durham, is that if a situation like this happens again, how is the town and UNH going to handle military-grade weapons being sent in? And also, how are they going to handle, I mean, I think that Councilor Burton also made a point that, to prejudge before a protest the content of that protest and label what it will be, is problematic, and it certainly was an outlier. I mean, the governor was totally silent when white supremacist groups filed for the permit and Nazi groups filed for permit to be marching in Concord. So this was an outlier event, and it also is problematic to, before a protest even occurs, decide exactly what the slogans of those protests are saying when you haven't seen what those people are going to be saying yet.
Councilor Bubar.
I don't understand how New Hampshire runs. Is it possible for UNH to tell the governor and the state police to stand down and stay off campus? Could that have occurred?
My understanding, I don't know, is that the governor called the president of UNH and asked, do you want help? And I'm not sure what President Dean but what we heard was that President Dean said, I'll call you back if I do. But on his own then, the governor sent the state police in, and not necessarily because UNH asked for them. But that story has changed in the official version. So I honestly,
because I guess
I would point out
I would tend to agree with Councilor Ford, but that's why I'm asking what the involvement, how intertwined the operation truly was.
I would point out that the governor of New Hampshire is a member of the University Board of Trustees.
Right.
And
UNH doesn't get its funding from the state.
Right. No, I stand by this. I have full respect for everybody's opinion, but this one irks me, and I think we ought to make this statement.
Well, but the point though really is, if the resolution is about the relationship with UNH, then that's one thing. If it's about the relationship with the state, that would be different.
But I think this point in the resolution is that Durham and UNH should work to better address, need to work to better address
Okay.
that third-party relationship, or not entirely third-party, but to address this role of the governor, because at least from the town's side, we have real concerns about military-grade equipment coming in to the town.
So, in this case, the governor sent the state police a group toward Hanover and a group to Durham, and UNH police asked the state police division that the governor sent to hold at an off-site location. They were in Madbury at the public safety unless they were needed. And at a certain point in the event, the UNH police chief made the call to ask the state police division to come and provide support. So the governor didn't forcibly move the state police into Durham to take control. Rather, the events unfolded as we've witnessed. Some information we see, other we may not be aware of. And at a certain point, the UNH police chief asked the state police to come. And they came as they were, which was in their riot gear, as a unit that trains in a certain way to address riotous situations in a certain manner. Now, we had a lengthy conversation about this at the Human Rights Commission, so I don't want to repeat that because I imagine many of you have heard that already or listened. But if we had done the kind of advanced operational planning we typically would when Durham and or UNH believe there may be a big event where there may be problems that arise due to crowd swelling or tempers flaring or whatever the issue may be, we will proactively think through the kind of response we think might be appropriate, the kind of resources on hand, and the kind of support we desire to have in the community. But because none of that happened, and the UNH chief was caught by surprise with how things played out, he asked the state division to come and they just came. And the UNH police chief, I'm quite certain, wasn't really aware of exactly how they were going to come. Typically when we ramp up for a large-scale post-sporting event, we do ask the state police for support, and it's important that they're available to provide that support. They provided valuable support and a lot of officers. But when we ask them to come, we set the terms of engagement and tell them the kind of resources we're comfortable with bringing to town. So, for example, we don't have dogs come. We don't any longer have horses come. We tend to keep the riot-type gear well behind the scenes, out of sight, and we only deploy that if things really start to degenerate. We wouldn't typically have the pepper ball guns that the state police had immediately and started to deploy, which I didn't learn until several days after the fact that had even happened. And typically we would not have the AR-15 style weapons out in plain view. There may be weapons like that behind the scenes if for some reason things really move in a very negative direction. But again, we wouldn't typically have that kind of armament out as an intimidation type of a tactic. So a lot of things went in a manner that I think a lot of us, if we could turn the clock back, we might have done differently. I think going forward, we, Durham Police and UNH Police, will be working much more closely together, proactively thinking about what might happen, pre-planning responses. It'd be conducive to our Durham community. So the governor didn't, if the governor just sent their storm and if neither Durham nor UNH had invited them, we would be very upset about that. But they were invited ultimately by UNH Police, given how things unfolded.
Is it correct to say that they were not invited into the area, so they came and staged, but then they were invited from the stage point into Durham?
Yes, that's
Okay.
accurate.
So there was kind of a bit of both.
Yeah, I think UNH Police learned that the state police, at the order of the governor, was sending a division to Durham for support, and UNH Police, in consultation with Durham Police, said, we don't want them coming into Durham please go to this remote location if you're needed. And ultimately, it was felt by UNH police that would be helpful to have them come.
The main question that's hanging, though, is why did Paul Dean, who was an extremely professional chief, I work with him on many things on legislation, act so precipitously? And this is where the Sununu thing comes in. My theory, and it's just a theory, I haven't talked to Paul, is that he wanted to show that the UNH could handle a situation. And so he acted precipitously. Apparently he was told not to wear his uniform because that would be excite things. And so by having the state police come on campus, it put Paul into action because he wanted to show that UNH could handle the situation. And I haven't asked Paul that, and I don't know, but I'm just trying to figure out why Paul, who otherwise has never done anything that I thought was untoward, at this very moment do something that's really against police work. Charging a crowd in plain clothes when you're outnumbered, and they weren't even being aggressive towards him, they were just standing there. And I think that's another sign that it was inappropriate for the state police to show up in the force they did, because if they hadn't, Paul in the UNH police may well have handled the situation better. At Washington State, where the President Chilton was, they called the leaders into a building and they got them, I think, when I read, that was a de-escalation, and it did de-escalate the situation there. At UVM, they did the same thing. The president called the leaders of the group, they changed, and they brought them in to talk about what they were doing and make sure there was no violence at UVM. But that's the difference between Governor Sununu telling the state that these radicals from outside of UNH and they're anti-Semitic are going to destroy. Well, I don't know. It's language that was inappropriate for the situation, and that's what caused this. Now, what that has to do with free speech at UNH, I think it all comes together, and I will stop there.
Yes.
I can't answer that question.
So I know.
And that's something we talked about at the Human Rights Commission too. It wasn't our job to judge right and wrong or who did what. It was just supporting seeing UNH and the town of Durham police departments working together, and they do anyways. They train together. They have the same training. They do all these things together. We had a situation that was not planned for, that's for sure. So, and the good news is they're doing this already. They're continuing to do work together that they've done in the past. It was an exceptional day on May 1st, I think, not anticipated. And that was part of the problem, was it wasn't anticipated. So that's also, I think, part of that discussion now too, is looking at what are some of the what-ifs that we need to consider if there's going to be a protest or something out of hand. But
And
yes.
I think what we talked about at the Human Rights Commission as well, which isn't a definite answer, but it helps explain part of what occurred, is that there had been numerous protests prior to this where things were very peaceful and everything played out as UNH police expected they would. And so based upon that, UNH police did not feel a ramp up was necessary for this event, yet it played out differently. And the university's lack of planning for it going in a different direction, I think, contributed to how it did play out one way or another. I was hopeful we might walk through, because we've talked about a number of changes, and I just want to make sure I've got a list of them all, and to see if you all agree with them or not.
Sure.
Would that be possible?
yeah, I mean, that's a necessary step, because just because someone says, I want to change this word, doesn't mean that it's...
All right, so on page 1 of the resolution, the 1, 2, 3, 4, on the fifth whereas, on page 1, we're changing the word all to its. Is that right? So say the university
Yeah.
system of New Hampshire's values are the constant and immutable guide to its institutional decisions and actions.
Do you want to do just a quick, like, hand raise or anything like that? Or just nodding heads around the table?
Anyone?
I guess if you have
No,
something you
it's-
want to say, jump in.
Yeah, I was gonna say nod should be fine, like jump in
Yeah.
if you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, then, page 2, the first whereas, I believe we're changing the word has to enjoys. So it would say, whereas the University of New Hampshire enjoys a reputation as an institution.
That was one of the
From
Robin's
Robin's.
suggestions.
Yeah.
And then in the, notwithstanding whether we're going to keep the second whereas or not, I believe are we changing either to neither or nor to or?
Nor to or.
Nor to or.
Nor to or, thank you.
I think no is correct.
Oh, okay.
And
But-
I would like to suggest in that paragraph, we change lethal tactical to military grade for clarity.
So it would say military grade
Grade
assets.
assets.
Is that a legitimate category? I don't know military that well. but
As
is
much
it
as-
I think so, I think so,
self-explanatory?
think AR-15s, that's,
Okay.
I think.
So does that mean we're saying that we're gonna leave it there? Because it seemed like there was a lot of.
No.
Not necessarily, we're just doing the word.
If it
Okay.
stays, this would be
Okay.
the change.
Yeah, just wondering.
All right, so with military grade assets. And we can come back to whether we're going to keep it or not. In the next whereas, the third whereas, I believe we talked about striking the bonus army and Dixon versus Alabama. We might also just drop all the examples from, for example, on.
It seems to me that it
But
at
not
least
sure.
talks about the long, range of this in our history. So I think when you go suffragists, civil rights, and military draft protesters, that would be enough that people understand that this is a long
50
path we've always
50
been
years of
on,
protesting.
but maybe
really.
you don't need all of it.
Okay.
So
That's
think-
just my opinion.
So think about, are you thinking remove bonus army and Dixon versus Alabama just because they're not ones that,
Well, it's just that, like you
Easy
said, I
come to
think it gets the concept without needing, you don't need them. If you're
Okay.
saying that this is just a history, history of what we've always done, is enough by going suffragist, civil rights, and military draft, or military protesters.
And the military draft protesters, it really was the Vietnam. It wasn't just the military, it was the Vietnam draft protesters, really, right? Was there other?
Well, I would just,
military-
you
Just
could even
Vietnam
just say
protesting.
war protesters if you wanted. I mean, we have a history of going farther than that, so.
I think that's fine.
But I think just bullet 3 are that you'll lose people.
Conscientious objectors predates Vietnam, but
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
Sure.
Civil War.
So are we leaving, so it'll say, for example, consider the suffragettes, civil rights movement,
and
and military draft protesters?
yes, but
war,
Yeah.
war
Or-
protesters.
suffragists,
I think military draft.
I think, are not suffragettes.
Suffragists.
Yeah.
Suffragists,
Yeah.
which, the suffragettes were a subset of that.
I'm sorry, yes.
Well, the protests weren't just about being drafted, they were about the war
War.
No,
itself.
but the
Yeah.
word, but everyone, at least I think they are, probably not, I didn't,
Yeah, I think I'm-
nowadays, but I was gonna say, everybody knows about the military draft and, protesters of the 60s, burning their draft cards and,
Yes.
Yeah.
going off to Canada and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So, I mean, I think that's one
Women's
that
right
just
in the bras
sits in
paper.
people's heads, that's all.
Well, it saved 100,000 lives because
So-
it stopped the war.
So can we leave military draft protesters? Are we, is that all right?
I think it's fine.
All right. And then, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth whereas, which additional are we dropping? The first one or the second one? Robin suggested the,
She,
Let me see, what did
she said,
suggested-
choose which one.
she
and
suggested deleting the first, is what she said.
I think it makes more sense to delete the second.
I agree.
All right.
And when you delete it, would you consider putting the word conflict in its place? Because when you see in the now therefore be it resolved, it does speak about conflict de-escalation with the same word.
This just happens to include to include conflict de-escalation measures?
Right, which would line up with the therefore be resolved.
All right.
We'd also discussed scratching the non-lethal, just leaving it saying and non, so it would say that additional steps to include conflict de-escalation measures and violent crowd control methods.
Yes.
I like that. That's good.
Okay. And then in the now therefore be it resolved, we were changing the word affirm to uphold in the second to last
That's a
line.
Robin suggestion.
That was a
yes.
Robin suggestion. So that brings us back to page 2, the second whereas, whether we're going to retain that or not. My preference, I believe dropping it would make it much easier for the university to be incredibly supportive of this resolution and speak in that manner. I think this whereas creates some challenges between the university and the governor's office potentially.
Well,
But it's up to you.
I would like to move an amendment that we strike the second whereas on the second page.
The second.
Discussion before we vote?
I'd say the one thing that we're trying to do with these whereas is sort of set up what happened. And with deleting that, we sort of miss the fact that there was a problem with the escalation process and the understanding of the environment that was going around the country at that time, that I think brought people trying to be the one that did it right, a media thing that was going on. But it should be something that does say that there was something that was missed in the escalation process. So and not blame it, just say, there was a little bit of a problem there that really got out of hand because we didn't have a solid process. I think that so that way don't get in the weeds with the governor thing, but hey, as a group, we've done it before. We've had an escalation process when we knew something was happening. The whole environment across the country should have said we should have a escalation process ready. So it's a system issue that needed to be in place, and it was missed, and it got way out of hand, which is said all the way through the rest. But I think if you don't set up the fact that that was a problem, and just say that part, I think it needs to be something there. But I don't like the way it is now. I wouldn't vote for it in that fashion. But I don't agree necessarily that taking it out doesn't leave that gap. I think it leaves a gap of the fact that there was a radical problem with the escalation, and we didn't have a
The
process.
governor's involvement made it impossible to de-escalate.
Well, I'm just saying that, to me, there's an awful lot of, now, I don't know this for a fact, but this is what I heard. Doesn't really sound very good if he came to the table here and had to explain himself on what really happened. You kind of had a guideline of what really happened. And we either have to put more into it, and to me, deleting it all away just skips the reason why, we kept how this thing progressed into a negative experience.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Yeah.
It would be easier for me if we took a separate vote on whether to include that phrase in the document, and then, as a result of that vote on what would be. Otherwise, those of us who would like that in here are forced to vote for a resolution that would like to get. So I'm just suggesting procedurally, would the author of that motion move to remove that paragraph and then have a separate
That was
vote?
my motion.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought
That's
you.
the amendment.
I thought you were voting, you said you wanted to vote on the resolution as amended, but if
No.
we hadn't amended it.
No. I wanted to move an amendment to the resolution,
Okay.
and that
I
is
misunderstood. I'm
to
sorry.
take out that paragraph.
Okay,
And it was seconded, and we're discussing that.
okay. That's
I
fine.
would like to offer forth a somewhat of a wording change to see if people would maybe then want to withdraw that motion. If we were to reword it something along the lines of whereas without a request from either the University of New Hampshire or the town of Durham, state police were dispatched equipped with military-grade assets to the Durham community to address what was what was declared preemptively as a threat. And what that does is it doesn't removes naming the governor particularly, but identifies the two problematic things that happened, which is that that the threat was declared preemptively without hours in advance of anything actually happening on the ground, and also that state police were dispatched with military-grade weapons. And I feel like that might be an easier thing for UNH to navigate relationship-wise, but I agree with Councilor Grant that for me it's really important. Well, one, I think it makes it harder to use this resolution for the future if we don't understand really the different contributing factors. But two, I feel really uncomfortable not specifically mentioning the military-grade weapons coming into the community and not specifically mentioning this kind of preemptive declaration about, what this protest was going to be.
Could we address the military hardware as opposed to what you're saying? We learned tonight, I believe from Todd, that there was a request from UNH to come. That they weren't dispatched to the community, they were dispatched to outside the community. We heard Madbury is not the Durham community, they were nearby. And what we object to was the weaponry that came. We heard that UNH did ask them for help. So if we say Durham and UNH didn't ask for help, it's not true. We were told tonight they did ask for help. So perhaps we can address the weaponry that they came with.
But did the UNH administration know that the state police were armed with military hardware?
That's the point. Can we address the hardware, not the fact that we called them to come?
The report
that they came with hardware that is totally inappropriate for a college protest.
I think that M's verbiage of that didn't really even highlight, this not who invited, who didn't. It was more about perceived escalation before it was really a problem, and the weapons. I don't know.
I believe she said without a request from UNH or Durham, and that is not what happened, as we learned tonight.
Well, we don't know that because the original story was they were requested to come to stand by, but not to deploy.
Mm-hmm.
So UNH now saying that they were asked to come may well mean they came to deploy in case, but what we heard in the beginning was that the governor deployed the troops before President Dean actually asked them to be deployed. That was the report we were getting. Now, we're all in hearsay mode now.
Can we say something that we don't believe that military hardware belongs in a college campus protest? Is that something we can agree to about this?
That's the point.
My question is, do we want to vote on taking this wording out and then work on something we would like to put in its place, rather than trying to do that in the middle of trying to decide whether...
That's fine with me, yeah.
Is it, or does that not make any difference?
Well, that makes
I feel
sense.
like, let's just do that and then let's talk about what could be there instead.
What would we add?
Or what would we
Or
have to
take
do?
out.
Maybe this will be voted to stay, and then
True, then it's-
that solves it.
Right. So anything anybody else needs to know before we vote as to whether to remove this?
I might just say that when you say vote to stay, but if we take it out, we can address what really everybody is concerned about, I think.
Right, oh, yes.
And not offending the governor.
Right.
It's open to further amendment.
It's open to further amendment.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Let's start on this side. And let's do a roll call vote
On the amendment.
on the amendment.
And the amendment is to remove the paragraph.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Would you like to start?
Sure.
Roll call.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Eric Lund, nay.
Wayne Burton, no.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Sally Nadell, aye.
M. Friedrichs, nay.
James Bubar, aye.
Heather Grant, aye.
I think that passed.
5-3, the ayes have it.
Yeah. 5-3.
Ayes have, yep. Okay, so, some suggestions for
Yes, I'd like to
what
make a
wording might
motion.
be?
Go ahead.
Yes,
I guess I'd like to
Councilor
ask
Bubar.
Wayne a question. I was never in the military, but I was under the impression that the Geneva Convention had banned shotguns from military.
I'm not sure of that.
Because if you're going to talk lethal weapons, I'd much rather look at an AR-15 than a 12 gauge with a slug. I mean, I think any firearm is lethal, and I don't think you want to pass a resolution that is blanket, don't bring lethal weapons onto campus. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the Texas Tower shooter that was on the University of Texas campus. They exist. They exist in schools. So, you know, you either need to be specific about this incident, but I would be concerned about some broad brush solution to solve world hunger.
I wrote that phrase, lethal tactical assets, because I knew it would get
Pretty
people's
broad.
attention.
Yeah.
Because that's what they were.
Yep. I'm not disagreeing with
on
that.
your campus here in Durham, with full clips in the hands of policemen with they're on the trigger in the picture.
Yeah.
What was he doing there? I'm aghast that would even happen.
In this event, but what he's explaining is if you had an active shooter on there, you'd probably want one of your policemen to be able to have some protection and be able to, you know, respond.
That's why
in
it's, now
kind.
you voted it out, so
Yeah.
we don't have to worry about it.
I think the point here is that what we find objectionable is the use of military-grade weapons, because yes, firearms are lethal weapons. That's their purpose, is to cause some living thing to be no longer alive.
Well, we don't want to have the protest that was obviously, you know, based on one particular topic. Everybody knew what they were doing there. Obviously, you don't want to have dangerous weapons as a way to beat them down. But what do we put in there in terms of understanding where the escalation started that leaves some of the more heated statements out? Because it's voting it out says, okay, leave it out with nothing else, and that's kind of where I got a little wishy-washy on it.
Well,
But
So, just so you people know, my fellow councilors, I'm happy with the resolution just as it is right now. So, if somebody isn't, then they should make a motion to add something or change it.
So you're calling the question.
No, I'm just.
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
With the motion, as with the adjustments Todd's had.
Yeah.
I'd like to propose something unless Councilor Friedman, you have something.
I don't.
Okay. Then I'd like to propose, whereas state police were dispatched equipped with military-grade assets to the Durham community to address what was declared hours in advance to be a threat. And
I will second that motion.
Could you read it one more time?
Yeah.
More slowly, please.
whereas state police were dispatched equipped with military-grade assets to the Durham community to address what was declared hours in advance to be a threat.
I like it.
Do
we know that for sure?
what is
We know for sure that state police were dispatched. We know that they were carrying military-grade assets.
Right, it's the third one on there.
And we do know that hours, and it's so at 3 p.m., which was before the protest began, Governor Sununu did go on to the various media channels across the state and declare the protest to be anti-Semitic. And declared that he would be sending state troops into those communities to assist. So all of that was decided, or that was a decision that he made hours in advance of the protests.
Let's jump in here. I was also trying to think of a way to include your concerns, Heather.
But
And being
this
more
one's
specific,
first.
just saying, whereas on May 1st, and we could use state police, agents equipped with military-grade assets were on the UNH campus, just to say that that's what makes this special, is that on May 1st, things were not as they were, one would have expected them to be. Just simplified. It's May 1st we're worried about. It's not a general concern. But it doesn't address who decided what or who did, what the timeline.
How many hours? Was it 1
But just
hour?
saying,
Was it 3 hours?
on May 1st, there were state police dispatched on the UNH campus who were carrying, however you want to say it, military-grade assets. Is that enough? Without, if something's going to be in there, is that enough?
Spoken here.
Okay.
So we should probably
Just vote on
work
that.
that through and then
Okay.
go from there.
Okay.
It
That's
seems.
fine. So we're voting on the wording that Councilor Friedrichs
Could you
prefers.
repeat that, please?
Sure. Whereas state police were dispatched equipped with military-grade assets to the Durham community to address what was declared hours in advance to be a threat. And
So are we ready to vote?
Can
Yes?
can I ask,
haven't
how
heard
do we
a
know
second.
the hours? I mean,
Here.
what time was the protest and what time was this decision made? How do we know those times? Do you know what those times were?
yeah, so
What-
that was pretty heavily researched and discussed quite at length at the Human Rights Commission and in the information that was shared there. So Sununu, the governor, did a press conference at 3 p.m. And in which he declared on television that these were anti-Semitic protests and he would be sending state police to these campuses.
And what was the time of the time scheduled for the protest to begin, do you know?
It was scheduled to start at 5 p.m.
So it would be 2 hours ahead of time?
Yeah.
Can we be specific then? Say 2 hours?
There are, I've seen the timelines that you saw. There's been specific timelines. One was done by UNH, one was done by the protesters. And they're coincident on this issue. The only place they vary is at what point the chief dean charged the students, whether they had formed a ring or not. The students in the pictures say they hadn't formed a ring yet, but in the UNH timeline, it says they had.
But the perceived
But
threat
they-
ahead of
the
time
perceived
was
ahead of
about
time, right.
the governor
Well,
ordering.
Sununu talked about,
everybody-
he was getting intelligence from all over the world that this
That's right. It was
group
happening all
yeah.
over the country.
Yeah, but he didn't, what he was intimating was that those who were going to protest were not students. They were agitators from outside. And he kept up with that even though most of the people there, about all of them, were UNH students. And so he was using this outside intelligence to make, I think, an erroneous assumption that, and that's where you get the disconnect between the over-response and what was actually happening there.
So we do
And there
have a
was no
motion.
thought that this was a preemptive strike by the governor to keep the ultra-right-wing counter-protesters away. Because they did not show up, which
Well,
sort of surprised me.
There was a few
No,
that
they
were,
did.
they actually did. They
Yeah,
did show up, yeah.
yeah, there were a few, and I think one of them was even arrested.
Briefly.
The ones that were waving flags.
Okay, the ultra-right-wing protester, excuse me.
All three of them.
Okay, so the question is, are you ready to vote on Councilor Friedrichs'
Was there a
suggested.
I can't remember yours
Yeah,
now
I
because it's getting late, y'all.
Eric Glenn seconded it.
Yep, it was seconded.
Do you want me to read
So-
it one more time?
Yeah, read it one more time.
Okay. Whereas state police were dispatched equipped with military-grade assets to the Durham community to address what was declared hours in advance to be a threat. And I wouldn't have any problem with changing it to 2 hours in advance, but the motion was already made, so.
Yeah, that's fine.
So ready to vote? We'll start on this side again, if we can. It's roll call.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Sonia Dell, nay.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
James Bluebird, nay.
Heather Grant, aye.
All right, the ayes have it.
So 6-2.
Yep.
It passes. Okay,
That's
so we'll
the-
insert that in place of what was the second whereas on the second page.
Anything else to this resolution before we make the next motion?
Were you able to write that all down? I can email it to you if
No,
that's.
I've got, so,
Okay.
whereas state police were dispatched equipped with military-grade assets to the Durham community to address what was declared hours earlier to be a threat, semicolon, and.
Perfect.
So, I think I can do this. The Durham Town Council does hereby adopt as Resolution 2024-17 as amended, expressing the town of Durham's interest in partnering with the University of New Hampshire to ensure that our constitutional right to freedom of speech for Durham residents and visitors within the community remains unimpeded, and to emphasize de-escalation in all, last word, conflicts? Is there a second?
Second that.
Second for Councilor Grant? Discussion?
I'd say
No
no.
discussion. No discussion.
Yep. Let's see.
No.
Okay.
Do you have a second?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Councilor Grant.
Councilor Grant is the second.
And Sally, you moved it.
I moved it, yep.
So, do you want to do a roll call vote?
I do want to do roll call on. I just didn't know if people needed more think time, but, sure, roll call vote.
Right. Heather Grant, aye.
James Bluebird, aye.
M. Friedrichs, aye.
Sonia Dell, aye.
Joe Friedman, aye.
Wayne Burton, aye.
Eric Lund, aye.
Darrell Ford, aye.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that helpful discussion. I think it's a tough one all around. So, thank you. Okay, let's see, where are we?
The agenda.
Nothing left that I know of.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Second from Councilor Ford. And all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? It's unanimous. This meeting is adjourned.
Wait. You're not going to be able to get us to sleep for at least 15
Yeah, I know.
minutes.
Sorry.